Chapter 361. Standing in front of the assassin from the Ling Xian Tian pavilion, Nie Tian could feel the piercingly cold air assaulting his face. The person in front of him had a pair of cold eyes, cold and emotionless, like a bottomless pool. Looking straight into Su Ziju's eyes, Nie Tian did not panic at all. Instead, he smiled and said, "I didn't think that you would dare to appear in the Dragon Blood Martial gathering. It seems that the person who hired you to kill me is not simple." Nie Tian guessed that the person who hired the assassin from the Ling Xian Tian pavilion was most likely the red-clothed elder of the Alchemist Association, Diao Jingde. However, he was not sure, so he wanted to test it out. However, Su Ziju did not give him the chance. He did not reply to him at all. Instead, he smiled coldly and said, "The person who receives the Death God order is the person that the Death God has his eyes on. As long as you are alive, the Death God envoy will not give up." Nie Tian raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "You people who claim to be the Death God envoy, will you also receive the Death God order?" Su Ziju frowned slightly. He did not know what Nie Tian meant. Whoosh! In the next moment, Nie Tian raised his arm and a sound pierced through the air. Su Ziju's reaction was extremely fast. He reached out and grabbed something. It was the bronze rank Death God order that he had given out a few days ago. "Death God order, I'll return it to you," Nie Tian growled. Without wasting any time, the absolute heaven slash appeared in his hand. Instantly, sword chi overflowed and filled the entire arena. Su Ziju looked at the Death God order in his hand and smiled cold. "Once the Death God order is issued, it will never be taken back. I will personally place the order on your corpse." As soon as he finished speaking, a light dagger appeared in Su Ziju's hand. The sword chi in it was dense and contained an extremely strong killing intent. Nie Tian took a glance at the glowing short sword and smiled. A sword condensed from sword intent? Su Ziju was a sword intent swordsman. The dagger in his hand was formed from the purest sword intent. Die. Su Ziju didn't answer Nie Tian's question. Instead, he let out a loud roar. Sword light flickered and a bone-piercing sword intent shot towards Nie Tian. "Since the death token has been returned to you, then the one who deserves to die is you." Nie Tian did not panic in the slightest as he raised the sword in his hand. One sword illuminating the night. Nie Tian softly muttered. Soon after, a sword glow flew out. Pung! The two sword lights collided directly. Flames appeared in the air and sword chi surged. Nie Tian and Su Ziju took a step back at the same time. They were equally matched in the first exchange. Su Ziju's cold eyes flashed with a hint of surprise, and he was shocked in his heart. He is clearly only a sword heart swordsman, while I am a sword intent cultivator. The power of his sword chi is actually not any weaker than mine. Strange. Nie Tian's reaction was the exact opposite of Su Ziju's. He said in his heart, "Su Ziju, you are an assassin. What you specialize in is assassination. To think that you would stand on the stage and fight fairly with me. You are simply courting death." That day on Heaven Luo, Nie Tian had already found out that Su Ziju's strength was not very strong. What he was most proficient in was sneak attacks. But in order to kill Nie Tian, he had actually come to the Dragon Blood Martial gathering. This was equivalent to giving up his greatest advantage. This was no different from courting death. Nie Tian did not give Su Ziju a chance to react. He immediately stabbed out with his sword again and again. The surging sword chi enveloped the entire stage. The two figures became faster and faster. Everyone could only see the sword light on the stage. It was almost impossible to tell who was who. After more than 10 moves, Su Ziju's resolute eyes slowly became lax. He could feel that as he fought faster and faster with Nie Tian, the latter's sword chi became more and more terrifying. And what made him feel even more inconceivable was that Nie Tian's sword chi seemed to contain a devouring power. It was actually constantly absorbing his sword chi, transforming it into his own strength. At this moment, Su Ziju felt a sense of fear of death lingering in his heart. As an assassin, Su Ziju had a calmer perception towards death than ordinary people. "Are you afraid?" Nie Tian's voice suddenly sounded out. Su Ziju saw a copious amount of sword chi shooting towards him. Immediately, a piercingly cold intent rushed towards him. Su Ziju's feeling was not wrong. Nie Tian's sword chi indeed had a devouring power. The Star Soul sword chi was born from the power of the stars. Not only did it inherit the power of the stars, but it also had a very tyrannical devouring attribute. The devouring power of the Star Soul sword chi and the 9 extremes Chaos Beast's heaven devouring soul both originated from the power of the stars. However, the Star Soul sword chi could only devour sword chi and not other types of energy. This was far from being as terrifying as the heaven devouring soul. Su Ziju's eyebrows furrowed slightly as Nie Tian's mighty sword strike appeared behind him. Immediately afterwards, a cluster of dim, illusory shadows appeared behind him and enveloped him. In the next moment, Su Ziju vanished into thin air. Seeing this scene, everyone outside the battle stage revealed a look of surprise. "Invisible! You are that little thief!" Tong Fu was also watching the battle. He immediately thought of something and pointed at Su Ziju and shouted. It was only at this moment that Tong Fu reacted. So this guy was the assassin who sneaked an attack on Nie Tian in Heaven Luo City. Seeing Su Ziju disappear into thin air, everyone had a look of horror on their faces. But Nie Tian did not panic at all. Instead, the corner of his mouth curled up and he smiled slightly. He muttered, "This move again? You really look down on me." Nie Tian guessed that the dim shadow that appeared behind Su Ziju was his primordial spirit. It could help him merge with the space, hide his figure, and restrain his aura. Swoosh! In the next moment, Nie Tian stabbed out with his sword. On the tip of the sword, a sky full of sword shadows gushed out and immediately filled the entire battle stage. The sword shadows filled the air, and on the battle stage an empty space appeared. It was a human figure. "It's time to end this." A trace of killing intent flashed in Nie Tian's eyes. With a sneer, he took a step forward and raised his long sword in the air. Suddenly, the sword aura surged, and the sword light with the aura of death flew out. Ling Tian's sword, a huge sword light whizzed out, and the strong astral wind was like the death god's knell. At this moment, the slackness in Su Ziju's eyes gradually expanded, and immediately turned into despair. He could smell the aura of death. It was so oppressive, so real, and it was irresistible. After killing so many people, he finally felt the feeling before death. But he did not give up. The short sword in his hand flew out and turned into a thin layer of shield, covering his body. Sword intent shield. Nie Tianling sneered. "This time, you can't block it." Bang! The sword light slashed down. Su Ziju's body trembled slightly, and the stone floor under his feet directly cracked. Crack! What followed next was the sword intent shield breaking, and it completely collapsed. Nie Tian had devoured a sufficient amount of sword aura at this moment, while Su Ziju had exhausted a large amount of origin energy. Under this situation, the latter could no longer block the final attack. Su Ziju's body flew out, streaked across the air, and crashed heavily on the ground. After landing on the ground, his bloodied body twitched a few times, and then there was no more movement. He died. Chapter 362. In the end, Nie Tian returned the Death God's medallion. However, Nie Tian did not look pleased. Instead, there was a hint of worry on his face. Viscount Su's Death God decree was only the first one. If he died, it meant that more Death God decrees would appear. Ling Xian's Sky Pavilion. A bronze assassin is already so difficult to deal with. The next assassin will be even more troublesome. Nie Tian looked at Su Ziju's corpse and frowned. Nie Tian walked down from the arena and looked at the other 3 arenas. At this moment, the three arenas were all engaged in intense battles. Zhang Xiaoyi and Qiu Shaokong's battle had reached its climax. Both of them were drenched in blood. They were fighting fiercely. Zhang Xiaoyi was a 9th-level giant soul expert, while Qiu Shaokong was a 1st-level true essence expert. One was the number 1 genius of the North Sea region, while the other was the 17th genius of Su Milingdu. Mr. Nye, who do you think will win? Tong Fu was also watching from the side. Seeing Nye Tian walk over, he chuckled and asked. Zhang Xiaoyi. With a faint smile, Nye Tian answered, the next move will be the one that will decide the outcome of the battle. Although Zhang Xiaoyi's strength was below Qiu Shaokong's, he had the battle cloud tyrant body. Even Qiu Shaokong could not break through the super strong defense of his battle cloud armor. Qiu Shaokong, I admit that you are strong, but this time, you will lose without a doubt. On the arena, Zhang Xiaoyi was shrouded in the battle cloud armor. He looked at the panting Qiu Shaokong and said sternly, arrogant! Qiu Shaokong clearly did not want to stop here. He was a genius of Su Milingdu. If he could not even enter the top 8 of the Dragon Blood Martial Meet, wouldn't it be embarrassing? But his spirit force was almost depleted. He knew that it was almost impossible for him to take Zhang Xiaoyi's next move. Battle Cloud Spear, Reverse Kill. Zhang Xiaoyi hovered in midair with a long black spear in her hand. Like a dragon, she soared into the sky. In the next moment, the long spear suddenly turned around, and the tip of the spear swooped down with an aura that could crush a city, blasting towards Qiu Shaokong. Boom! In the face of the surging aura of the battle cloud spear, Qiu Shaokong barely propped up a water wave shield, but it could only resist for a moment. In the next moment, he was blasted off the arena. After landing on the ground, Qiu Shaokong spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. His face was as white as a sheet as he looked at Zhang Xiaoyi in horror. Still shaken, he said fiercely, Zhang Xiaoyi, just you wait and see. Zhang Xiaoyi frowned slightly and did not speak. Actually, he had already held back with that last strike. Otherwise, even if Qiu Shaokong didn't die, it would be very difficult for him to stand up. Qiu Shaokong was a person from Sumi Spirit Capital, and was also a direct descendant of the Qiu family. The Qiu family was also one of the 4 great families. Tang Mo and Gu Qiu were the 4 great aristocratic families of the 3,000 small world. Ingrate. Tong Fu could also tell that Zhang Xiaoyi was being merciful. He glared at Qiu Shaokong and said without hesitation, you. Qiu Shaokong took a glance at Tong Fu and spat out another mouthful of blood. Tong Fu curled his lips and revealed undisguised contempt as he roared, what about me? Bite me if you don't like it? Others were afraid of Qiu Shaokong's identity, but Tong Fu was not at all. These disciples of the great aristocratic families were used to being arrogant all the time. They wished they could walk with 3 legs. If they blindly spoiled him, they would really think they were the important ones. Qiu Shaokong obviously knew Tong Fu's identity. Even though he felt wronged, he didn't dare to show it. He could only leave with hatred. Thank you. Zhang Xiaoyi walked down from the arena and clasped his hands at Tong Fu. Tong Fu chuckled and said, little boy, I am looking forward to a battle with you. I will keep you company. Zhang Xiaoyi was not afraid. Nye Tian looked at the 2 of them and smiled faintly. He thought to himself, these 2 are both ferocious warriors. If it's a battle, it will be very interesting. Bang! Just then, a muffled sound came from the arena next door. Then, a bloody figure flew down. Nye Tian and the others looked over. It was Gu Qilin. Nye Tian was a little startled. If he remembered correctly, Gu Qilin's opponent was Tang 13. He really didn't think that even Gu Qilin would lose to Tang 13. Nye Tian and Gu Qilin had fought before. He knew that the latter was very capable and was definitely stronger than Dongfang Du. Nye Tian turned around and saw the ghost blades disappear from Tang 13's eyes. He mumbled, the ghost eye is powerful. Especially the double-blade ghost eye. It's dominating. The reason why Tang 13 could defeat Gu Qilin was because of the double-blade ghost eye. However, right now, his face was pale. It was obvious that using the ghost eye was taxing on him. Tang 13, you win. Gu Qilin crawled up. His entire body was covered in wounds and blood. He was as miserable as he could be. It was obvious that Tang 13 went easy on him. Or else Gu Qilin wouldn't have been able to stand up again. Gu Qiulin had never dreamed that he would lose to a weirdo like Tang 13, and that he would lose so miserably. Tang 13 only glanced at Gu Qilin but didn't say anything. Nie Tian could tell that defeating Gu Qilin was Tang 13's limit. It would be difficult for her to continue. On the other side, the last battle of the first round was not over yet. This battle was the longest out of the 4 rounds, and it was also the coolest. Because it was between Rui Qianyu and Zihua. Right now, because Rui Qianyu had consumed a large amount of dragon's blood, she had reached the 2nd level of the enlightenment stage. Zihua, on the other hand, was still in the 1st level of the enlightenment stage. Nie Tian was curious about this. Zihua had absorbed a large amount of blood energy in the ancient Bloody Tomb's soul-gathering pool. Logically speaking, her abilities should have increased a lot, at least to the 3rd or 4th level of the enlightenment stage. Could it be? At some point, Nie Tian saw Emosher, who was watching the battle. He immediately realized that Zihua had transferred the blood energy from her body to Emosher. Emosher was now at the 1st level of the giant spirit, and he looked like a 15 or 16-year-old teenager. To reach this level, it would have taken at least half a month to a month. Now that he had reached this level, it must be because he had absorbed Zihua's blood energy. Zihua and Rui Qianyu's abilities were about the same. Of course, this was under the condition that Rui Qianyu did not use her rainbow pupils. Now that Rui Qianyu had reached the 2nd level of the enlightenment stage, she could easily suppress Zihua. God Lu Yi. The 1,000 leaves jade Bodhi spirit behind Rui Qianyu shook slightly. Several green leaves gathered together, forming a sharp blade that attacked Zihua. Burning purple night. Zihua was fearless. A wisp of flame flew out of her hand and formed a purple flame in midair. Instantly, the air was burned into a dense mist. Chapter 363. Puff! In the next moment, a green ray of light pierced through Zihua's shoulder. Strangely, it wasn't blood that flowed out of Zihua's shoulder, but a purple stream of heat. Ah! Zihua shrieked in pain as she was sent flying. The purple stream of heat splashed in the air, making an ear-piercing sizzling sound before dissipating. At this moment, a figure flew out, caught Zihua in the air, and landed steadily on the ground. Nie Tian was slightly stunned as he looked at the figure. It was Emosher. She lost. Emosher looked at Rui Qianyu and said calmly. His face was cold and emotionless. Rui Qianyu nodded slightly, then walked down from the arena. Nie Tian could already tell that Rui Qianyu didn't use her full strength. Otherwise, Zihua wouldn't have survived. Master. Zihua was held in Emosher's arms. Her breathing was weak, and her face was swollen and purple. Don't talk. Don't be afraid. Emosher hugged Zihua tightly, but put one hand on the wound on her shoulder. He said softly, My Z, sleep. Sleep. You won't feel pain when you sleep. Nie Tian looked at the scene in front of him, and his expression gradually became gloomy. He realized that Emosher was absorbing Zihua's power. It was obvious that he was trying to merge Zihua's power back. Zihua was originally a clone of Emosher. Even though both of them had formed physical bodies, the power inside them was still the same. At this moment, Emosher was trying to retrieve Zihua's power. But if he did that, Zihua would die. Although Zihua was injured by Rui Qianyu, it wasn't fatal. Yet, Emosher was absorbing her power. Obviously, he felt that she was useless, so he might as well keep the last of her power for himself. One had to admit that Emosher was ruthless. You! At this moment, Rui Qianyu noticed Emosher's action. She frowned, and anger flashed across her cold face. However, Emoshur had already finished absorbing Zihua's power. Zihua fell asleep in his arms, never to wake up again. Nie Tian still remembered that when Violet Flame had left the ancient bloody massacre tomb, he had told the latter, "Since you have an independent consciousness and a fleshly body, you don't have to follow the Doomsday Flame. You can walk your own path." At that time, Nie Tian said that to Zihua, hoping that she would leave Emoshur. However, Zihua clearly did not listen to Nie Tian's words. He returned to Emo Ten's side and died in such a manner. Demon Ten stood up and looked at Raindrop Thousand Leaf expressionlessly. He said coldly, "Kill her, and I will avenge her." Thousand Leaves stared at the crimson-eyed youth before her, speechless. Compared to Rui Qianyu's indifference, Emoshur was truly ruthless. Nie Tian sensed Emoshur's strength and was surprised. After absorbing Zihua's power, Emoshur's strength had increased by 2 levels, reaching the 3rd level of the giant spirit level. Emoshur was already a terrifying opponent. Now that his strength had increased again, he was undoubtedly more difficult to deal with. Next, the martial arts competition continued. The remaining 4 matches of the top 16 were carried out at the same time. Emoshur vs. Su Shubin, Tong Fu vs. Qing Xian, Tang Xiao vs. Xianyuan Miao, Long Sky vs. Ko Tianxing. Qing Xian Ko Tianxing and Xianyuan Miao all admitted defeat. Therefore, Tong Fu, Tang Xiao, and Long Sky advanced to the top 8. Of the 4 martial duels, only Emoshur and Su Shubin's duel continued as usual. The two stepped onto the stage at the same time and looked at each other. Su Shubin was ranked 5th on the Nanshan Genius list. If his opponent was Tong Fu, Tang Xiao, and Long Sky, he would also admit defeat. But he felt very lucky to have met Emoshur. He could naturally see that Emoshur's strength was at the 3rd level of the giant spirit level. He was a little puzzled. Emoshur's strength was only at the 1st level of the giant spirit level. How did he become a 3rd level in the blink of an eye? But since Emoshur entered the top 16, he hadn't met a strong opponent, so he didn't reveal his true strength. This made Su Shubin believe that he was a pushover. "Kid, I didn't expect that you would dare to come onto the stage." Su Shubin sneered, obviously not taking Emoshur seriously. "I'll give you one more chance to speak." The corners of Emoshur's mouth curled up. His scarlet eyes were burning like blood, emitting a thick bloody aura. "Huh!" Su Shubin was slightly taken aback. He didn't understand what Emoshur meant. One chance to speak gone. Emoshur's face was expressionless. His eyes were cold and emotionless, like an endless abyss. Just a glance at him was enough to make people feel despair. Before he finished speaking, Emoshur's figure suddenly moved. His speed was so fast that one couldn't see his movements clearly. It was as if his figure disappeared, turning into a scarlet flame. What a fast speed! Nie Tian was slightly moved when he saw this scene. Even with his mental strength, he couldn't see Emoshur's steps and movements clearly. On the stage, a scarlet flame circled around Su Shubin and then stopped, turning into Emoshur's figure. When the crowd looked at Su Shubin again, he had turned into a human charcoal. The extremely strange scene caused everyone present to be petrified. On the high stage, Zhao Kuo and the rest were dumbfounded. After a long time, Zhao Kuo reacted and asked Gu Yi, Big brother Gu, are my eyes playing tricks on me? Why didn't I see that young man's movements clearly?" Gu Yi's throat moved. His old face was stiff for a long time before he said, "It's not that our eyes are playing tricks on us. It's that young man's speed is too fast." His speed was too fast. Even Gu Yi, a 6th-tier alchemist with a mental strength of 63, couldn't see clearly what had happened. After a long time, the dead silence of the crowd was broken by the gulping sound of saliva, which caused an uproar. F***CK. What the hell, am I seeing things? How did that guy kill someone? I didn't see it. I only saw a flash of red light, and then Su Shubin was roasted into a charcoal. My God, this speed is too abnormal. Who is this guy? How can he be so fast? The crowd's cries and curses filled the air. Emo sure didn't care about anything, as if everything around him had nothing to do with him. His face was still expressionless, but when his gaze swept past Nye Tian, there was a slight change. Emo sure walked down from the stage, and with a gust of wind, Su Shubin's corpse turned into ashes and dissipated in the air. At this moment, even Tang Xiao, Long Sky, and the rest looked at Emo sure with deep fear. Chapter 364. In the last match of the top 16, Emo sure used a strange movement skill to instantly defeat Su Shubin. The top 8 of the Dragon Blood Martial Gathering was born. Top 8. Nye Tian, Long Sky, Zhan Xiaoi, Tong Fu, Rui Qianyu, Emo sure, Tang Xiao, Tang 13. Next, it was still a single elimination match. The top 8 would draw opponents. The winner would advance and the loser would be eliminated. The top 8 would no longer compete at the same time, but one match at a time. In the first match, the referee drew 2 people and announced, Dragon Blood Martial Gathering, Top 8 Battle, First Match, Tong Fu vs. Long Sky. Tong Fu, Long Sky, the two whose names were called looked up at each other at the same time. Between them, fighting spirit was strong. Fu! On the high platform, hearing Tong Fu's name, Gu Yi's heart tightened and he jumped to his feet. Brother Gu, don't worry. Fu is very strong. He's more than enough to beat Long Sky. Zhao Quan knew the relationship between Gu Yi and Tong Fu, so he smiled and comforted him. Gu Yi's face did not relax at all. He suddenly asked, Who is Long Sky? Someone from Su Mi Spirit Capital? Just now, Gu Yi had seen Long Sky slay a dragon. The scene was still fresh in his mind. Even if Tong Fu was in the first level of the true energy boundary, he might not be Long Sky's opponent. With Long Sky's strength and talent, he should not be a nobody. I don't think so. Zhao Kuo shook his head. I've never heard of such a person in Su Mi Spirit Capital. Zhao Kuo had always been in Su Mi Spirit Capital. He knew all the geniuses of the big families, but he had never heard of Long Sky's name. Gu Yi frowned, then looked at Lu Liangkai of Diyuan Chamber of Commerce. The latter shook his head and said, with Long Sky's talent and strength, he would definitely be in the top 3 of the genius list in any domain. I have heard of the young geniuses of the various domains, but I have never heard of this name. He's not someone from Su Mi Spiritual Capital, nor is he someone from the 4 regions. Could it be that this fellow popped out from a crack in a rock? Gu Yi was a little anxious, his brows knitted even more tightly. Lu Liangkai immediately said, Master Gu, don't be anxious. In the 4 regions, there are many young geniuses who are not interested in the genius list of the Martial Competition Merchant Union, so they did not enter the list. This is also a very normal thing. Yes. Look at that Nye Tian city lord. He's so young and so powerful. Isn't he also not on the genius list? Zhao Kuo added. Gu Yi took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Long Sky's figure had already appeared on the stage. His eyes were cold and sharp, and he had the aura of a sovereign descending upon the world. Ah Fu, watch out for his left arm. Nye Tian grabbed Tong Fu's arm and said in a low voice. Left arm? Tong Fu was slightly taken aback. Nye Tian did not have time to explain and whispered, There's something strange about his left arm. You must be careful. Nye Tian had previously felt that within Long Sky's left arm, there was an abnormally terrifying power. This power, even Nye Tian was extremely afraid of it. All right. Tong Fu casually agreed. He did not take Nye Tian's warning to heart. Bam! Tong Fu stepped onto the stage with a single step, leaving a deep footprint on the ground. Seeing the two of them on the stage, everyone's eyes immediately focused on them. The first battle of the top 8, no one wanted to miss the exciting scene. Nye Tian City Lord, between the two of them, who do you think has a higher chance of winning? Zhan Xiaoi came over and asked in a low voice. Long Sky. Before Nie Tian could reply, two voices came from behind him. Rui Qianyu and Tang 13's figures appeared. Nie Tian frowned slightly and said, "You two also noticed something strange?" "Yes." Rui Qianyu and Tang 13 nodded. Nie Tian smiled faintly and immediately understood. Of these two, one had the 9-colored eyes and the other the ghost eyes. Of course they could see that Long Sky's left arm was strange. But Zhang Xiaoyi did not understand. She frowned. "What do you see?" Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "Pay attention to Long Sky's left arm. You will see what is strange soon." Zhang Xiaoyi turned around and stared at Long Sky's left arm. After a long while, she said, "There's nothing strange." Nie Tian was speechless. He lowered his voice again and said, "Compare his left arm with his right arm." Zhang Xiaoyi's eyes darted around and immediately noticed something. She let out a long "oh." Just as she was about to say something, Nie Tian glared at her and made her swallow her words. On the stage, the most intense battle was about to begin. The hammer of destruction appeared in Tong Fu's hand. It was even bigger than his body and a violent aura spread in all directions. What a powerful aura! This was the first time Tong Fu had revealed the hammer of destruction. The violent aura was frightening. Clang! At the same time, the dragon head blade appeared in Long Sky's hand. A ray of light shot out of the blade. It was as bright as a waterfall and seemed to have the power to cut through the sky and the earth. "Very good. I sure want to see just how strong you are." Tong Fu chuckled. Shortly after, the hammer of destruction revealed its giant spirit true body and the mountain-like hammer swayed above its head. At this moment, everyone felt a pressure on their chest that made it hard for them to breathe. The hammer of destruction was a legendary 8th rank origin soul. It was extremely powerful and could destroy the world. Hammer of destruction, strike of destruction. Without hesitation, Tong Fu launched an attack. The hammer of destruction covered the sky and pressed down like a collapsing mountain. In that instant, the momentum was suffocating. Gulp. Seeing Tong Fu's imposing manner, Zhang Xiaoyi couldn't help but swallow her saliva. She couldn't help but glance at Nie Tian beside her. At this moment, he finally understood why Nie Tian had warned him to be careful if he ran into Tong Fu. Zhang Xiaoyi thought that even if he activated the battle cloud armor, he might not be able to withstand Tong Fu's attack. Long Haotian frowned slightly in the face of Tong Fu's devastating attack. The dragon-head tyrant blade emitted a majestic blade cry, and soon after, blade images surged out. Countless blade images intertwined with each other, forming a dense blade image armor that enveloped Long Haotian. Nie Tian shook his head and thought to himself, "You want to defend with this layer of blade intent armor? You underestimate the hammer of destruction's strike of destruction." The hammer of destruction's ferocious momentum shook the heavens and the earth. If Long Sky only relied on a layer of blade intent armor to withstand this strike, he would be seeking his own death. Since Long Sky was from the Heaven Burial Union, he shouldn't be so stupid. Boom! While Nie Tian was confused, Long Sky suddenly stretched out his left arm. There was an explosion in the air and something strange happened. Long Sky's left arm suddenly swelled up. His shirt was torn to shreds, and his entire arm was exposed. Nie Tian took a closer look and immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Long Sky's left arm grew to 3 meters long in an instant and became extremely thick. What was shocking was that it wasn't skin that was exposed, but a layer of dense scales. The scales were black and shiny, exuding a sense of explosive power. The 5 fingers had also turned into sharp bone claws, emitting a cold glint. "This is..." Nie Tian was shocked, and his expression froze in an instant. "Blade Dragon Arm." At the same time, Demon King Corpse Luo's voice came from the chaotic original coffin. Chapter 365. Long Sky's entire arm was over 3 meters long when fully extended. It was densely covered with black dragon scales. At first glance, It looked no different from real dragon scales. The moment Nie Tian saw the arm, he was dumbfounded. He could not believe his eyes. Damn! Saber dragon arm. It's definitely the legendary saber dragon arm. Corpse Lord exclaimed from the chaotic original coffin. It's really the saber dragon arm. Nie Tian finally came to his senses. The shock on his face did not diminish. At this moment, he finally understood why Long Sky's left arm could release such a terrifying aura. It was the legendary saber dragon arm. The saber dragon arm, Qilin arm, silver wolf arm, and 8 desolate ghost bone were known as the 4 great mysterious arms. Legend had it that it had the power to split the heavens and earth. In the history of the celestial realm, there was once a saber dragon arm martial artist. Legend had it that this person once fought against the 9 emperors of the celestial realm. Although he was defeated by the 9 emperors and died with hatred, he became a legend of the celestial realm. It was said that there were 9 dragon seals in the saber dragon arm martial artist. Opening the first dragon seal would awaken the power of 1 dragon. Opening the second would awaken the power of 10 dragons. The third would awaken the power of 100 dragons. The fourth would awaken the power of 1,000 dragons, and so on. Moreover, when the dragon seal was opened, the saber dragon arm martial artist's body would produce pure dragon energy. When the dragon energy accumulated to a certain level, the martial artist would be able to transform into a dragon and possess the true power of a divine dragon. The dragon form of the saber dragon arm martial artist was of course incomparable to Dongfang Du's divine dragon form. The former was tens of thousands of times stronger than the latter. Nie Tian had never imagined that he would meet a saber dragon arm martial artist in the 3,000 lesser world. This was definitely a pleasant surprise. At this moment, he had an idea about Long Sky's saber dragon arm martial artist. When Long Sky's saber dragon arm martial artist appeared, everyone was shocked. Just you wait. I will make you all even more shocked. Long Sky's lips curled into a smile. He raised his head to look at Tong Fu and roared, "Saber dragon's fury, dragon raising the sky." Boom! The blade dragon arm suddenly blasted out, the huge dragon claw clenched into a dragon fist, against the sky. The sky actually burst with dazzling flames. The blade dragon arm brought about a fierce astral wind. The stage was actually unable to withstand this astral wind, and was forcefully swept up. The stage used for the top 8 battles was specially reinforced and had the support of a rank 3 spiritual array. Even so, it was still unable to withstand the astonishing power of the blade dragon arm. Tong Fu was in the air, but he could already feel the gust of astral energy rushing towards him, and his heart immediately trembled. But at this moment, he had no other way out and could only charge forward. If he were to stop now, he would absolutely be courting death. In midair, the distance between the blade dragon arm and the hammer of destruction was getting closer and closer. 10 meters, 8 meters, 5 meters, everyone tensed up at this moment. Bang! The most powerful collision was actually a muffled explosion. Everyone immediately felt their bodies shake, and their ears were about to explode. Tong Fu's hammer of destruction and Dragon Sky's evil dragon arm were both extremely powerful. The collision between the two was an absolute collision of strength against strength. There was no trick at all. In a battle of absolute strength, the stronger one would win. It was that simple. Crack! A crisp cracking sound rang out, and a crack appeared on Tong Fu's hammer of destruction. The hammer of destruction, a rank 8 legendary spirit, and Tong Fu's true Yuan Qi was enough to withstand the fierce attack of a true Yuan level 5 martial artist, but it could not withstand a punch from the blade dragon arm. What a powerful force! Everyone's expressions changed simultaneously. Zhang Xiaoi thought that the power of Tong Fu's hammer was definitely more than the power of 1 dragon. The strength of 1 dragon was an unimaginable power for any martial artist below the 5th stage of the true element realm. In terms of the power of this hammer, Even Nie Tian, Rui Qianyu, Zhang Xiaoi, and the others would find it difficult to withstand it. Unfortunately, Tong Fu's opponent was Dragon Sky, the Dragon Sky with the Blade Dragon arm. The Blade Dragon arm could be said to be the natural enemy of all fierce martial artists. It was almost impossible to suppress the dragon arm in terms of strength. Bang! Followed by a loud explosion, the hammer of destruction was directly bombarded and flew up into the sky. Tong Fu was sent flying along with the hammer of destruction. Not good! Nie Tian screamed, and immediately a pair of proud sword wings appeared on his back. He fiercely stomped his feet, and his figure rose from the ground and flew out. Fu! At the same time, Gu Yi's wail came from the high platform. Nie Tian rushed up and finally caught Tong Fu. Wild yuan qi gushed out from his palm and directly into the latter's body. Thump! Nie Tian and Tong Fu landed firmly on the ground. Fu! Nie Tian looked at the bloody Tong Fu in his arms, and his heart ached. Tong Fu was the son of Nie Tian's disciple, Tong Liao. If Nie Tian had not been killed by Emperor Dainite and his daughter, Tong Liao would not have been implicated, and Tong Fu would not have been stranded in the 3,000 small world. Thinking of this, the grief in Nie Tian's heart deepened, and he frantically poured yuan qi into Tong Fu's body. But Tong Fu did not move, and the blood in his body was rapidly decreasing, and his life force was becoming weaker and weaker. Wake up! I won't allow you to die! Nie Tian bellowed, and all the yuan qi in his body gushed out, but Tong Fu still did not have the slightest reaction. Fu! At this time, Gu Yi directly jumped down from the high platform. His old body did not stand firmly, and he fell down, rolling on the ground. But he immediately got up and rushed towards Tong Fu. If you take a punch from my blade dragon arm, you will die without a doubt. On the stage, Dragon Sky's cold voice sounded. Nie Tian did not care about Dragon Sky, and continued to pour yuan qi into Tong Fu. At this time, Gu Yi almost crawled over, the spatial ring on his hand shook, and hundreds and thousands of spirit dawn gushed out. Immediately, the rich smell of spirit dawn spread out, and the people outside the arena could not help but raise their noses, desperately sniffing. Quick, quick, feed him spirit dawn! Gu Yi grabbed a handful of spirit dawn, his hands trembling. Nie Tian knew that eating spirit dawn at this time was useless, but he did not give up. He randomly grabbed a handful of spirit dawn, and desperately stuffed them into Tong Fu's mouth. Unfortunately, there was no effect at all. Master, let me. Just as Nie Tian was on the verge of despair, Corpse Demon Lord suddenly spoke from inside the chaotic original coffin. Nie Tian did not answer, and directly released Corpse Demon Lord. The spirit-devouring rat appeared, and from its mouth, it breathed out a cloud of blood qi, and then immediately entered Tong Fu's body. Puff! In the next moment, Tong Fu's body suddenly trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of black blood, and then miraculously came back to life. Fu! Nie Tian and Gu Yi were extremely excited, and shouted at the same time. Big brother, Mr. Nie. Tong Fu slightly opened his eyes, and seeing Nie Tian and Gu Yi, he shouted with difficulty. Chapter 366. Under the impact of the spirit-devouring rat's blood qi, Tong Fu managed to survive. Corpse Luo Demon Monarch returned to the chaotic original coffin. His already small body shrunk even further. Nie Tian naturally knew that the spirit-devouring rat's shrunken body meant that it was weaker. The Corpse Lord had sacrificed his own strength to save Tong Fu. He did this to gain Nie Tian's approval so that he could break the blood contract sooner. On the arena, Long Sky frowned when he saw that Tong Fu had miraculously come back to life. He was clearly unhappy. Nie Tian turned back to look at him. The killing intent in his eyes was so thick it was almost tangible. Nie Tian already had thoughts about the blade dragon arm. Now it was even more necessary for him to turn his thoughts into action. Tong Fu was defeated in the quarterfinals. Long Sky advanced to the semifinals. Dragonblood Martial Meeting, Quarterfinals, Second Match, Nie Tian vs. Zhang Xiaoyi. It was Nie Tian's turn to fight. His opponent was Zhang Xiaoyi. Nie Tian could tell that Zhang Xiaoyi was the weakest in the quarterfinals. He only had the strength of a giant soul realm. Even though he had the Battle Cloud Tyrant body, he could not unleash its full power. If Zhang Xiaoyi's strength increased by another level to the true energy realm, he would definitely be more terrifying than Tong Fu. He might even have the strength to fight Long Sky with the Blade Dragon arm. It was a pity that he was only a giant soul realm. Without true Yuan, it would be difficult for him to fight Tong Fu and the rest. Nie Tian City Lord, I did not expect that my opponent would be you. Zhang Xiaoyi stepped onto the arena at almost the same time as Nie Tian. He looked at the latter and smiled faintly. Actually, Zhang Xiaoyi already had a plan. If he met Tang Xiao or Emo Shi, he would admit defeat. If he met anyone else, he would try to fight. There were too many experts in this Dragonblood Martial Meeting, far exceeding Zhang Xiaoyi's expectations. Hence, he set his sights lower. To be able to see one's own strength clearly was a form of wisdom. Nie Tian was strong, but in Zhang Xiaoyi's eyes, he was not on par with Emo Shi and Tang Xiao. Tang Xiao's strength was there for all to see. He was at the second level of true element, and he was the strongest person in this martial meeting. On the other hand, Emo Shi's strength was strange and unfathomable. His speed that was faster than the blink of an eye and his merciless method of killing were sufficient to cause others to feel fearful. I also did not expect that you would be my opponent. Nie Tian smiled faintly. Do you have confidence in your Battle Cloud Tyrant body? What do you mean? Xiaoyi paused. With a smile, Nie Tian said, There's no need for a life or death duel between us. Why don't we settle this with a single punch? Zhang Xiaoyi was intrigued. I wonder how City Lord Nie Tian is going to decide the outcome of the battle with a single punch? Nie Tian smiled, a cunning look flashing across his eyes as he said, Let's have a competition of absolute strength. Whoever is stronger will win. What do you think? Cloud, Xiaoyi said. Xiaoyi Stone. Xie Tian, Xiao Tian Nie Tian wanted to use the Heaven and Earth Stone to determine the winner. One punch each. Whoever had more strength would be the winner. After the battle between Xiaoyi and Duanmulu, Nie Tian did not want to hurt the former. Hence, he thought of this idea. After the battle between Xiaoyi and Duanmulu, the two of them had been fighting fiercely. Nie Tian really didn't want to hurt Xiaoyi, so he thought of this idea. Xiaoyi was very confident in his Battle Cloud Tyrant body. He would not be at a disadvantage if they competed in strength. Since both agreed, the judge could not say anything. Nie Tian City Tyrant, you first? Xiaoyi was a little sly. He let Nie Tian go first. All right. Nie Tian smiled faintly, not declining. The other martial artists crowded around, wanting to see how strong Nie Tian's hands were. On the high platform, Duanmu Bai, Elderly, and the rest were also interested. They all stood up. During the pre-selection, Nie Tian had been the first to take the test. He had left a half-meter deep fist mark on the Heaven and Earth Stone with a single punch. At that time, Duanmu Bai had been extremely shocked. At this moment, Duanmu Bai really wanted to know how terrifying Nie Tian was. Nie Tian came before the Heaven and Earth Stone and his lips twitched. He thought to himself, my raw star stone has the power of 640,000 stars. The absolute strength in my hands is 25 million kilograms. That is the power of half a dragon. If I add my martial technique, I can basically hit out 50 million kilograms of force. That is the power of one dragon. At the thought of this, Nie Tian glanced at Zhang Xiaoyi and thought to himself, this fellow has the Battle Cloud Overlord physique, and his pure physical strength is also half a dragon's strength. If he were to add in his martial techniques, he would probably have the strength of one dragon. Looks like I have to put in a lot of effort this time. Nie Tian City Tyrant, let's begin. Xiaoyi saw that Nie Tian did not start and urged. Okay. Nie Tian smiled faintly and no longer hesitated. He raised his arm and Yuan power surged out. Even his fist seemed to expand. War God Imperial Fist. Nie Tian shouted and punched. At the same time, one of the star souls on the star soul steel sensed it and turned into pure energy. Boom! When Nie Tian punched out, a layer of soil flew up from the ground. A deep ravine appeared under his feet. A huge spear formed, and on the tip of the spear there was a huge shadow of a fist. Bang! With a muffled sound, the huge heaven and earth stone shook violently. Immediately, a 1.5-meter deep depression appeared. In the center of the depression there was a clear fist mark. Seeing the fist imprint on the Qianquan stone, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, their eyes wide open. Many of them were participants of the Dragon Blood Martial Gathering and had personally attacked the Heaven and Earth Stone. Naturally, they knew how difficult it was to leave a fist mark on the Heaven and Earth Stone. However, Nie Tian was able to leave a 1.5-meter deep fist mark in such a relaxed manner, which was simply too inconceivable. 1.5 meter. 1.5 dragon strength. On the high platform, Duanmu Bai stood up. He had guessed that Nie Tian's limit should be 1 dragon strength, but now it seemed that he had underestimated Nie Tian. Old Li also stood up and suddenly said, I think Nie Tian City Tyrant has not used his full strength. Not used his full strength? Duanmu Bai was completely dumbfounded and speechless. Old Li's guess was right. Nie Tian had not used his full strength. Because his punch just now was the War God Imperial Fist combined with the second-order Star Soul, Earth Spear. He still had a third-order Star Soul in his body that he had not used. The Star Soul contained the power of the stars. It was the purest form of energy, and it was the best to attack the Heaven and Earth Stone. If he had used a third-order Star Soul, the fist mark on the Heaven and Earth Stone would have been several times deeper. Nie Tian nodded slightly, expressing his satisfaction. He turned to Zhang Xiaoyi, who had not yet reacted, and said, Brother Xiaoyi, it's your turn. Only then did Zhang Xiaoyi react. He swallowed hard, and even his body trembled slightly. He said, Nie Tian City Lord, I admit defeat. Nie Tian did not expect that he would admit defeat directly. Zhang Xiaoyi naturally had his own considerations. His battle cloud tyrant body combined with his martial techniques was 1 dragon strength. It was impossible for him to punch out a 1.5-meter fist mark. Chapter 367. In the second match of the quarterfinals, Nie Tian won without any bloodshed and successfully advanced to the next round. Dragon Blood Martial Meet, quarterfinals, third match, Rui Qinyu vs. Mo10. The third match immediately began. Hearing the name of the third match, Nie Tian could not help but frown. Rui Qinyu's strength was very strong, already at the true energy boundary second stage, but against Mo10, it seemed a little difficult. Mo10's strength was not strong, but he had the demon fire body. The power of the Doomsday Flame was overbearing, and coupled with that strange speed, it was even more troublesome. Nie Tian looked at Rui Qinyu, and just as he was about to speak, the latter had already leapt up and appeared on the arena. At the same time, Mo10's figure also landed on the arena. Looking at Rui Qinyu in front of him, he showed a hint of surprise and said, Your eyes, I want them. Mo10 had long noticed Rui Qinyu's existence, and he had long known that her eyes were one of the 10 congenital great pupils, the rainbow pupils. Hearing Mo10's words, Nie Tian's heart sank. The spectators outside the arena were also on tenterhook. The way Mo10 killed just now was too strange, and completely unreasonable. Rui Qinyu's expression was cold, like a block of ice. She did not pay attention to Mo10, but glanced at Nie Tian and said lightly, Pay attention, look at his movement skill. Nie Tian's pupils shrank slightly. He did not expect that Rui Qinyu would fight Mo10 on the arena just to let him see Mo10's flaws. Unfortunately, her plan was mostly in vain. Mo10's speed was too fast, and even Gu Yi could not see through it, so how could Nye Tian see through it? Was this not a joke? At this moment, Mo10's figure moved. In just a flash, he directly turned into a fireball, and his figure could not be seen at all. His speed was too fast, and when he moved, it was like a line of fire. In the eyes of others, Mo10's speed was so fast that it was impossible to perceive, but in Rui Qianyu's eyes, his figure was very clear. With the rainbow pupils, Rui Qianyu could see that Mo10's whole body was ignited in a strange flame, and his whole body was like a fireball that contained an extremely terrifying power. Even iron and ice would melt upon contact. If one touched Mo10, they would definitely turn into a pile of charcoal in the blink of an eye. Magical 10's figure flickered a few times. It was obvious that he was trying to interfere with Thousand Leaves' observation. At a certain moment, his figure suddenly stopped, and the flames on his body suddenly soared. A wave of flames shot out towards rainy Thousand Leaf. Just as the flame was about to land on Rui Qianyu, a group of green Bodhi leaves appeared and formed a green net, blocking the path of the flame. Just as the flame was about to land on Rui Qianyu, a group of green Bodhi leaves appeared and formed a green net, blocking the path of the flame. Even so, the flame still pierced through the green net. Rui Qianyu turned slightly, and a burn wound appeared on her shoulder. Mo10's figure stopped at this moment, and he looked at Rui Qianyu with a strange expression. He then smiled and said, "I almost forgot, your eyes can perceive everything. This speed is nothing to you." Rui Qianyu's face was expressionless, and she did not look at the wound on her shoulder. All her attention was on Mo10, and she did not dare to relax for even a moment. Mo10's figure flashed again, and a moment later, several more burn wounds appeared on Rui Qianyu's body. Nye Tian watched on nervously from below. However, at this time, he was not observing Mo10's movement techniques. Instead, he was assessing Mo10's strength. Given Mo10's speed, unless Nye Tian could borrow Rui Qianyu's 9-color eyes, he would not be able to see Mo10's movements clearly. Hence, at this moment, Nye Tian had a thought that made him break out in cold sweat. Could he just let the 9-level Chaos Beast swallow Mo10? It was not that Nye Tian had never swallowed a demonic flame before. Previously, in the Burial Cloud Abyss, he had used the Primal Chaos Original Coffin to swallow the Doomsday Flame's clone, Scarlet Flame Lai Shinzi. Because of this, he had also awakened the Primal Chaos Origin embryo. However, that was when the demonic flame did not have a physical body. Now that Mo10 had a physical body, if he swallowed it directly, he would be courting death. If Mo10 entered the 9-level Chaos Beast's body, he would have to rip the latter's stomach open. After thinking for a long time, Nye Tian finally decided that if he wanted to swallow Mo10, he would have to destroy his physical body first. Once Mo10 lost his physical body, he would revert to his original demonic flame form, and he would be able to swallow it directly. However, even under such circumstances there was a huge risk. When Nye Tian had swallowed Scarlet Flame Lai Shinzi forcefully, the Primal Chaos Original Coffin had nearly exploded. If the 9-level Chaos Beast can withstand the impact of the heavenly ice-cold fragrance, it should be able to swallow the Doomsday Flame as well, Nye Tian thought to himself. However, it was still too early to think about this, and he was starting to fantasize. At this time, Rui Qianyu, who had been taking a beating on the arena, suddenly moved. The Thousand Leaves mystic jade Bodhi spirit appeared behind her. It shook violently, and countless green leaves joined together to form a huge palm, which slapped directly at Mo10. Mo10 was slightly stunned. Obviously, he had not expected Rui Qianyu to counterattack at this time. He laughed coldly and growled in a low voice, "You have a death wish." The flames on Mo10's body suddenly became more intense. In an instant, a fireball surged out and whistled. PFFF. The fireball rushed out, pierced through the huge green palm, and headed straight for Rui Qianyu. However, at this time, a pair of leaves formed a pair of wings behind Rui Qianyu. She was already in midair. Bang! The huge green palm's attack range was too wide, and it covered almost the entire arena. Mo10 had nowhere to retreat, and he was hit by the huge palm. He took a few steps back, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was injured. For the first time, someone on the arena was not killed by Mo10. Instead, Mo10 had injured him. At the same time, Rui Qianyu's figure fell from the sky. She landed below the arena and said calmly, "I lost." Seeing Raindrop Qianya descend from the arena, Nie Tian's heart, which had been hanging in the air, finally relaxed. Although Rui Qianyu was seriously injured, and there were countless burns on her body, they were not serious injuries. With her strength, she could recover in a few days. Mo10 steadied himself. He looked at Rui Qianyu with anger in his eyes, but there was nothing he could do. Although Mo10 had won, he had failed to kill Rui Qianyu, nor had he obtained the 9 colored pupils. He had even been injured, which was unacceptable to him. "Are you all right?" Nie Tian didn't care whether Mo10 could accept it or not. He walked to Rui Qianyu and asked softly. Rui Qianyu didn't answer his question. Instead, she asked, "Did you see his movement clearly?" Nie Tian was speechless. He nodded and said, "Yes, I saw it clearly." Chapter 368. The third round ended with Mo Shi's victory. He entered the top 4 in a depressed mood. Next was the last round of the top 8. There were only 2 people left, Tang Xiao and Tang 13. Both of them were descendants of the Tang clan and both possessed the ghost eye. Plus, they hated each other. This round was destined to be a battle of life and death. Bang! Bang! Tang Xiao and Tang 13 landed on the stage at the same time. They stared at each other angrily. Their desire to fight was on the verge of exploding. At the same time, outside of the battlefield, 4 chis that were originally hidden began to vibrate and became nervous. These 4 were the secret guards of the Tang family, who were secretly protecting Tang Xiao and Tang 13. 2 followed Tang Xiao and 2 followed Tang 13. At this moment, the 4 of them were highly nervous. Their hearts were in their throats, afraid that Tang Xiao and Tang 13 would fight to the death. Because the secret guards had their own rules. If they couldn't protect their master, they would be buried with him. Great! Tang Xiao was secretly happy. His pair of eyes stared coldly at Tang 13. To be able to meet Tang 13 in this round, Tang Xiao felt like he had fallen into a honeypot. He hated Tang 13 to the core. This was the best chance to kill him and he couldn't miss it. Even though he knew that the clan leader loved Tang 13, Tang Xiao wasn't afraid. After all, he was a direct descendant of the Tang clan. If he really killed Tang 13, he could just say that it was an accident on the stage. The clan leader wouldn't make him pay for Tang 13's death. "My 13th brother, there are no brothers on the battlefield. If you don't want to die, surrender and kowtow to me 3 times. As your 3rd brother, I will let you go. How about it?" Tang Xiao wasn't in a hurry to attack. Instead, he spoke in a strange tone. "Is that so?" Tang 13 smiled cold and said in a low voice, "I, Tang 13, can afford to lose and can afford to die." To be honest, before the dragon blood martial art began, he did think that if he met Tang Xiao, he would surrender. But now, not only would he not surrender, he would take his opponent's life. "Very good. That's what I wanted to hear." Tang Xiao shouted cold. His entire body's qi shot up to the sky. He had never thought that one day, he would have a life-and-death battle with this strange 13th brother on the martial arena. All this time, Tang Xiao had treated Tang 13 like trash, even though Tang Hao had personally identified her as the strongest ghost eye in the Tang family in 100 years. How strong could a ghost eye that was unwilling to open its eyes be? But Tang Xiao had never imagined that the strongest ghost eye would shock the world the moment it opened. In just a year's time, He had actually opened the ghost eye to the double-edged ghost eye. It was simply unbelievable. Therefore, if he didn't deal with his 13th brother, whom he had always treated as trash, he would definitely step on him in the future. Now that there was a chance to kill Tang 13, how could Tang Xiao let it go? This battle. He was determined to win. Tang 13. He had to kill them. Tang Xiao's body emitted an endless amount of killer's intent. It was almost tangible as it moved towards Tang 13. Tang 13, I will let you know how big the gap between us is. Tang Xiao roared. His entire body's qi once again rose to an extreme height. Tang 13's face was calm. She said cold, Tang Xiao, I will also let you know how terrifying the double-edged ghost eye is. It is not something you can imagine. Is that so? Tang Xiao laughed coldly. His eyes were filled with extreme disdain. Everyone said that the ghost eye was monstrous, but Tang Xiao, who had cultivated a ghost blade and opened the single-edged ghost eye, felt that the ghost eye was just so. Other than making his perception and observation far better than normal people, it did not have much use. He had opened the ghost eye when he was 10 years old. It had been almost 10 years since then, but it was still a single-edged ghost eye. He could only use one special ability, and it was very weak. He usually did not even bother using it. Therefore, Tang Xiao still did not understand why when people mentioned Tang Hao, the first thing that came to mind was the ghost eye. In his eyes, the ghost eye was not that powerful. At least, it was not as scary as the legends said. Of course, Tang Xiao's understanding of the ghost eye was completely wrong. The ghost eye was not powerful on him. That was because he was too stupid. He could not unleash the full power of the ghost eye. Tang Xiao's aura became stronger and stronger. A giant axe appeared behind him. It emitted the aura of fire. For the first time, Tang Xiao used the giant spirit true body. It seemed like this time, he had made up his mind to kill Tang 13 in one strike. Tang Xiao knew that there were Tang family shadow guards outside the arena. If the two of them fought to the death, the Tang family shadow guards would definitely intervene. Therefore, he only had one chance to attack. This time, he would not allow any accident. Third young master, stop. As expected, when Tang Xiao's giant spirit true body appeared, panicked voices came from outside the arena. Multiple shadows rose from the ground at the same time. However, it was too late. Pure soul cleave ghost axe, mountain splitting strike. Tang Xiao let out a deep roar. The giant axe in the air came crashing down. It was so powerful that it had the power to split a mountain. In this life-threatening moment, Tang 13 was like a rock, not moving an inch. Tang 13, die. Seeing that Tang 13 didn't move, Tang Xiao thought he had given up. He let out a maniacal laugh, his entire face twisted. Tang Xiao's attack. Not only did he use the giant spirit true body, but he also used his qi. On top of that, he used the heaven-ranked martial technique. Even a warrior of the third level of the true energy realm would not be able to block this attack. Everyone stared at Tang 13. Their hearts were filled with shock and questions. Is he crazy? He's not moving at all. Is he trying to block this attack with his body? Forget about Tang 13's martial body being unable to block this attack. Even Zhang Xiaoyi's battle cloud tyrant body or Tong Fu's hammer of destruction would not be able to block this attack. Out of all the participants, the only one who could block this attack with their body was Long Sky's dragon arm. Just as the pure soul cleave ghost axe was about to land, Tang 13's lips curled up into a mocking smile. His pair of ghostly eyes suddenly closed and opened again. Two ghostly blades appeared in each of his eyes. Ghostly blade, red moon reverse strike. Tang 13 whispered. Whoosh! Immediately, a blinding red light pierced through the air and sliced through the air. It was suffocating. At this moment, everyone present felt a sudden burning pain in their eyes, and their hearts trembled inexplicably. In the next second, the blinding red light shot through the sky and into the clouds. The power of heaven and earth changed. Pooh! A crisp sound rang out. The pure soul cleave ghost axe was sliced in half. Chapter 369. The sudden turn of events caused everyone to widen their eyes in shock. Their breathing stopped, their expressions froze, and everything fell into a dead silence. Only Tang Xiao, who was still in the air, felt a warm and sticky liquid spurt out from his neck. Both his hands subconsciously reached for his neck. The moment his hands touched his neck, a ping sound rang out. Tang Xiao's head flew into the air. His eyes widened in shock and despair. Ping! Tang Xiao's body slammed onto the ground. It was a headless corpse. The shocking scene caused the entire arena to fall into a deathly silence. Everyone's expressions were petrified. Not a single sound could be heard. All they could hear was each other's racing heartbeats. The power of the ghost eye. After a long time, Nie Tian took a deep breath and closed his chapped lips. He subconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He couldn't think of any words to describe the shock in his heart at that moment. Nie Tian knew how powerful the ghost eye was, but he didn't think that Tang 13's ghost eye had already grown to such a terrifying level. Based on the power of his eyes, it wouldn't be long before the double-edged ghost eye would become the triple-edged ghost eye. Nie Tian stared at Tang 13. More accurately, he stared at Tang 13's eyes. There was a trace of fear in his eyes. Nie Tian couldn't be sure. If he were to fight against Tang 13, would he be able to block an attack from the ghost eye? If Nie Tian used his third-rank astral soul, he would definitely be able to kill Tang 13. But did he know that Tang 13's ghost eye was so monstrous? Therefore, no matter when, underestimating your opponent is the same as humiliating yourself. Tang 13's expression was complicated. His face was as white as paper, and tears of blood flowed from his eyes. It was obvious that using the ghost eye was too much of a burden on Tang 13. Under the immense power of his eyes couldn't take it anymore. Because of this, it was impossible for Tang 13 to continue in the next round. Third Master. After a long time, the deathly silence was broken by two cries. Two silhouettes flew out and appeared beside Tang Xiao's corpse. At the same time, two other silhouettes appeared beside Tang 13. These four figures were the Tang clan's 4 dark guards. The two bodyguards beside Tang Xiao glared at Tang 13 with anger in their eyes. The two bodyguards next to Tang 13 were obviously protecting her, afraid that the other two would do anything. Tang Xiao was dead. According to the rules of the Dark Guards, the two people responsible for protecting him had to die as well. Pooh! Tang 13 took a step forward and spat out a mouthful of blood. Her expression softened a lot. She said to the two bodyguards beside Tang Xiao, "I will personally explain Tang Xiao's death to the leader. Don't worry, I will not drag you into this." "Thank you, 13th young master." The two dark guards were stunned for a moment before the anger in their eyes turned into gratitude. They quickly knelt down. "Yes." Tang 13 nodded her head and walked down the stage. Arriving beside Nie Tian, she squeezed out a smile and said, "Nie Tian, my dragon blood martial gathering ends here. I have to go back. I will wait for you at Sumeru's spiritual capital." "Yes." Nie Tian stared at the young man whose eyes were bleeding. He knew that he had to go back to Sumeru's spiritual capital. His heart felt strange. Just as Tang 13 was about to turn around, something occurred to her. She took out a golden medallion and tossed it to Nie Tian. "If you ever come to Sumi's spiritual capital, take this medallion to me. I'm sure you'll find me." Nie Tian took the token. Seeing the word Tang carved on the front and the word Inner carved on the back, he immediately understood that this was the Tang clan's token for the inner court. 13th young master, this. One of the bodyguards felt that Tang 13's action of giving the token to Nie Tian was inappropriate. He wanted to say something but was stopped by Tang 13. "This is the Tang clan's token for the inner court. Only the Tang clan's inner court elders and above can have it." Tang 13 forced a smile and said, I think you will need it in the future. Nie Tian smiled bitterly. Let's hope not. Tang 13 didn't linger and left with the Tang clan's bodyguards. Nie Tian, I am taking Tang Yuyu with me. Thank you for helping me find her. Tang 13 walked a dozen meters away and raised one hand high in the air. She spoke to Nie Tian through telepathy. With a faint smile, Nie Tian watched Tang 13 leave. You've only just remembered to thank me? He still remembered that when Tang 13 came to find him last night to thank him, she giggled the whole night. On the battlefield, outside the battlefield, after Tang 13's silhouette completely disappeared, everyone finally reacted. I've heard that the Tang clan's ghost eye is powerful. I didn't think it was this powerful. This is insane. Yeah, this is completely unreasonable. In the future, I will definitely not fight with anyone with ghost eye. You want to fight, but do you have the right? Everyone discussed excitedly. The shock in their hearts couldn't be calmed down. On the high platform, a few people also looked in the direction Tang 13 and the others disappeared. They couldn't calm down. I've long heard that the Tang clan's ghost eye is powerful. I didn't think it was this terrifying. Lu Liangkai took a deep breath. His voice was trembling. Next to him, Zhao Kuo also clicked his tongue. The ghost eye is ruthless. No wonder the Tang clan is the leader of the 4 aristocratic families. The ghost eye of a prodigy is already so terrifying. Tang Hao's ghost eye is unbeatable. The Tang clan is powerful. At this time, Gu Yi had already left with Tong Fu. If he had seen the scene of Tang 13 killing Tang Xiao, he would have cursed again. After a long time, the commotion caused by the battle between the 2 Tang brothers finally died down. The dragon blood martial meet continued. The battle of the top 4 had now become the top 3. The 4 judges discussed for a while and decided to draw lot. A moment later, 3 long lots were prepared. Nie Tian, Long Sky, and Emo Shi stepped forward and prepared to draw lots. Emo Shi was the first to walk forward. He drew a lot. At the end of the lot was a single word: fight. When Nie Tian and Long Sky saw the word fight, they exhaled simultaneously. If Emo Shi had drawn no fight, it would have been a battle between Nie Tian and Long Sky. Nie Tian would have advanced. Long Sky and Nie Tian did not stand on ceremony. They both drew a long lot at the same time. Humph. Long Sky looked at the word on the lot and could not help but laugh sinisterly. Nie Tian saw Long Sky's expression and immediately knew the result of his lot. He glanced at it. It was indeed fight. Emo Shi and Nie Tian drew fight. This meant that they would have to fight and Long Sky would advance. Apart from being powerful, the people of the Heaven Burial Meet are also this lucky? Nie Tian glanced at Long Sky. The corner of his mouth twitched. He laughed bitterly in his heart. In a martial meet of life and death, strength was the most important. Sometimes luck was equally important. Dragon Blood Martial Meet, Semifinals, Nie Tian vs. Emo Shi. Then, the judge announced loudly. In the next moment, Nie Tian and Emo Shi's figures appeared on the stage at the same time. An earth-shattering battle was about to begin. Chapter 370. As soon as Nie Tian and Emo Shi appeared on the arena, the crowd cheered loudly. Nie Tian was now an influential figure in the Nanshan region and even in the 3,000 small world. Emo Shi's strength was so strange that it sent chills down people's spines. The battle between the two of them was very interesting. On the high platform, Duanmu, Bai Li, Elder Li, and the others felt their hearts tighten. Their eyes were fixed on the arena. They knew how terrifying Emo Shi was. With that kind of speed, unless a warrior of the Spirit Wheel realm activated the Spirit Wheel space, it would be difficult to restrain him. At this moment, Nyeyuro suddenly walked over and gently pulled on Duanmu by Li's sleeve. With a serious expression, she said, "Uncle, don't worry. My brother Nie Tian will definitely be fine." Duanmu, Bai Li and Elder Li were speechless. This little girl was very confident in Nie Tian. On the arena, Emo-Shur and Nie Tian stood opposite each other. Nie Tian, you are the one who forced me out of the burial cloud abyss. Emo-Shi's crimson eyes were ice-cold, merciless, and completely devoid of any emotion as he looked Nie Tian in the eye. So what if I am? The corner of Nie Tian's mouth curled up. He actually revealed a mocking smile. If I am, then you must die, Emo-Shur replied coldly. His extreme murderous intent condensed into a terrifying aura of death that filled the space within a few hundred meters. There are many people who want to kill me. Let's see if you have the ability to do so. Nie Tian stopped smiling and released his aura. He could feel that as Emo-Shur's aura filled the air on the arena seemed to have become sticky. It even made it difficult for him to breathe. He knew how powerful Emo-Shur was. He shouldn't be careless. The Star Soul tablet in the chaotic original coffin was already on standby. It could explode with its strongest power in an instant. You have a death wish, Emo-Shur roared. His strange red eyes suddenly shot out a beam of red light that turned into dots of red light that filled the entire arena. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, the countless red lights floating in the air suddenly expanded, igniting the prairie into countless fireballs. Immediately, the entire martial arts arena soared into the sky, directly turning into a sea of fire. What the? Everyone exclaimed in shock. At this moment, the martial stage was covered in flames and it was impossible to see anyone. Scorching waves of flames surged and an oppressive aura was emitted, causing people to be unable to sense any aura. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. They didn't know what had happened on the arena, and they didn't even know if Nie Tian was dead or alive. Nie Tian, is this all you've got? You can't even withstand my ordinary flames? Emo-Shur's voice sounded cold and extremely arrogant. Beautiful sister, is brother Nie Tian okay? At this moment, Rui Qianyu was on the high platform. Beside her, Nie Yuro's delicate face was twisted into a mess as she asked nervously. Don't worry, Nie Tian is fine. It was rare that Rui Qianyu wasn't so cold as she said softly. Others couldn't see the situation on the martial arts arena clearly, but Rui Qianyu's 9 color pupils could see everything clearly. 9 color pupils could even see through a rank 5 illusion at a glance. How could a small sea of fire stop Rui Qianyu's powerful perception? Rui Qianyu could feel that the aura of Emo-Shur's entire body was many times stronger than when he was fighting against her previously. It was obvious that when Emo-Shur fought against Rui Qianyu previously, because he wanted to obtain the 9 color pupils, he had many misgivings and didn't dare to use his full strength. But when facing Nie Tian, he didn't have any misgivings at all. He completely gave it his all, no longer holding anything back. From afar, Rui Qianyu could see that although Nie Tian was in the middle of the sea of fire, his entire body was enveloped by a green vine armor. Although the demonic flames were scorching hot, they didn't harm Nie Tian at all. So it turned out that before the sea of fire, Nie Tian had used a second-ranked astral soul, the extreme wood armor. Luckily, the extreme wood armor is a defensive-type astral soul, and it seems to have a suppressive effect against the demonic flames. If not, I would really be burnt to ashes. Nie Tian rejoiced in his heart. At this moment, if he didn't have the extreme wood armor astral soul, he really wouldn't know how to deal with the situation in front of him. However, although the extreme wood armor astral soul could withstand the demonic flames, it was also slowly withering away. If Emo-Shur continued to burn like this, the extreme wood armor astral soul would collapse sooner or later. At this moment, Emo-Shur seemed to have discovered something as he frowned. After which, the sea of fire was directly absorbed by him, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Not bad. After the sea of flames disappeared, Nie Tian let out a sigh of relief. His ivy armor spread out, and he looked like a massive treant standing behind him. You want to kill me with just these skills? Although he was shocked in his heart, Nie Tian put on a very relaxed expression on his face. He smiled faintly and mockingly. Very good, you actually managed to block my burning doomsday. Looks like my decision to escape was a very wise one. Emosure smiled coldly. He was secretly shocked by Nietion's strength, but the killing intent in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Nietion faintly smiled and said, "But you chose to appear at the Dragon Blood Martial Gathering. This is an extremely foolish choice." "Nietion, I like your arrogance very much," he said. Emosure's crimson eyes flashed with cold killing intent. In the next moment, his silhouette flickered, transforming into a line of fire. His voice rang out in the air, as if it came from all directions. "Nietion, to be so insolent in front of me, you are seeking your own death." Nietion's heart jumped. He could not see Emosure's silhouette clearly, only the flashes of fire that flickered in front of him. Bang! 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 Immediately after, several fireballs flew over and struck the supreme wood armor. The ivy armor began to fall off piece by piece. But what was more terrifying was that the demonic fire's aura penetrated the supreme wood armor and invaded Nietion's body. Nietion instantly felt his chest tighten, and his breathing became uneven. His face turned red. "Master, this guy is the Doomsday Flame?" Inside the chaotic original coffin, Demon Lord Corpse Luo sensed that the demonic fire's aura was about to seep into the chaotic original coffin, and he screamed in fear. "Of course!" Nietion bellowed furiously. He almost cursed out loud. "Did you just find out? What the F***ck?" Demon Lord Corpse Luo cursed, and he exclaimed, "The 13th demonic fire on the demonic fire ranking has formed a human form." At this time, Nietion could not be bothered to talk nonsense with Demon Lord Corpse Luo, and he used Wakaba Flying Swan Steps to dodge the incoming attack. Unfortunately, his Wakaba Flying Swan Steps was extremely strange to other martial artists, but it was child's play in front of Emosure's speed. Bang! Bang! Immediately afterwards, Nietion was hit several times in a row. Finally, a crack appeared on his extreme wood armor. "What the F***ck? Nietion was furious, and he roared, "Do I have no choice but to be beaten up?" As he roared, he no longer hesitated, and the absolute heaven slash appeared in his hand, and he swung it horizontally. A circular sword wave surged out, and instantly, sword chi overflowed in all directions. "You want to hurt me with this kind of sword chi?" Emosure's mocking voice was heard, and endless flames surged out of his body, and directly devoured the endless sword chi. Nietion was hit by the demonic fire again, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 371. Nietion was struck by the demonic flames. Although the supreme wood armor had helped him block most of the impact and the corrosive force, the demonic flames were unusually strong. They had seeped into his body through his pores and into his spiritual space. In an instant, Nietion's vital meridians were infected by the demonic flames. It was as if they were about to combust. Suddenly, a bone-piercing pain spread throughout his body. Large beads of sweat formed on Nietion's forehead. His handsome face was contorted as he resisted the extreme pain. At the same time, the demonic flames surged into the chaotic original coffin. The corpse Luo Demon Lord shrieked in fear and jumped into a corner. The Mirage Snow Fox's eyes reflected the scarlet demonic flames and became as red as blood. It looked extremely strange. "Hiya!" The 9-tier Chaos Beast woke up from its deep slumber. It shrieked as its eyes narrowed. A layer of light surged out of its body and swallowed the demonic flames that had surged in. Just as the 9-extremity Chaos Beast swallowed the demonic fire, it immediately felt that something was amiss. A pained expression appeared on its face, and its mouth opened immediately as it panted heavily. Several strange rays of light appeared on its originally scarlet body. The rays of light moved strangely under its body like small snakes. In the blink of an eye, they gathered at the top of the 9-tier Chaos Beast's head from all parts of its body. Boom! Immediately, A streak of scarlet flames shot out from the top of the nine-tier chaos beast's head and dissipated into the boundless chaotic space. Nye Tian was taken aback by what was happening in the chaos original coffin. The nine-tier chaos beast swallowed the demonic flames and expelled the demonic qi within. Nye Tian immediately understood what was going on. He was overjoyed. Although the nine-tier chaos beast had looked like it was in pain when it swallowed the demonic flames, it had still managed to withstand the impact of the demonic flames. This undoubtedly meant that the nine-tier chaos beast could swallow the doomsday flames. After confirming this, Nye Tian forgot about the pain all over his body. A look of surprise appeared on his face. Emosher was stunned when he saw Nye Tian's reaction. He said in a cold voice, "I'm surprised that you're still able to last until now after my doomsday devil flames entered your body." Emosher's doomsday demonic flame had invaded the bodies of those cultivators, and they had turned into a pile of bones in the blink of an eye. However, the fact that Nye Tian was still alive made Emosher feel very strange. With how violent Emosher's doomsday demonic flames were, even the true qi of a true element boundary cultivator would find it difficult to resist, so how could Nye Tian survive until now? "You want to kill me with just the doomsday demonic flame? You're not mature enough." Nye Tianling shouted coldly. He didn't have any scruples anymore. The supreme wood protective armor on his body was fully unfolded, and the sword extinguishing heavenly chop was violently thrust. Suddenly, the sword light shone brightly, and the sword light that was dozens of meters long whizzed out. The terrifying sword qi spread out, covering the space of hundreds of meters in all directions. It was majestic, like a dragon coming out of the abyss, and suddenly pressed forward. Good! Facing Nye Tian's aura, Emosher didn't panic. Instead, he laughed loudly and his battle intent surged. A black flame appeared in his palm, and the blood qi was abnormally dense. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a black spear. "Nye Tian, you're not bad. You're worthy of me using the demonic flame edge." The black spear in Emosher's hand was called the demonic flame edge. It was formed from the doomsday heart of the doomsday flame. It had merged with the doomsday flame's most terrifying blood qi, and was the purest crystallization of the blood qi that had existed under the doomsday volcano for 10,000 years. When the demonic flame edge appeared, the dense blood qi covered the sky. The space within a few thousand meters was immediately filled with a suffocating smell of blood. At this moment, everyone had the illusion that their souls had been pierced. Demonic flame edge, heavenly evil ghost strike. The demonic flame edge in Emosher's hand spun and trembled violently. Suddenly, waves of ghostly cries could be heard. It was as if countless people were suffering from the torture of hell. That kind of heart-wrenching screams could take away one's soul. Swoosh! As the demonic flame edge whistled, it released black and red rays of light that surged towards Nye Tian. Boom! The sword light and the demonic flame edge collided. Nye Tian felt his mind tremble, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was actually sent flying backward. Whoosh! A pair of proud sword wings immediately appeared behind his back. His body froze in midair, and his face was filled with fear. It wasn't pale, but frightening black. The primal chaos original coffin kept surging into the demonic flame. Although the nine-extremity chaos beast knew that the demonic flame was disgusting, it still swallowed it in big mouthfuls. It knew that Nye Tian was in a life-and-death battle. If it didn't swallow the demonic flame, its little home, the primal chaos original coffin, would probably be lost. The corpse Luo demon Monarch sniffed the demonic flame, and its small body could only tremble. It could only curl up in a corner with the phantom snow fox. As it trembled, it kept shouting, "Brother Jiu, Brother Jiu, Brother Jiu, Brother Jiu, very good." Seeing that Nye Tian was frozen in midair, Emosher laughed maniacally. A pair of wings actually appeared on his back. Emosher's wings were the same color as the demonic flame edge. They were black in color, like cold steel, and emitted a suffocating feeling. Emosher's wings shook, and his body leaped up to maintain the same level as Nye Tian. He laughed maniacally and said, "Nye Tian, I am getting more and more interested in you. I am a little reluctant to kill you now." On the surface, Emosher looked incomparably arrogant, but deep down, he was very puzzled. His blood-fiend demonic flame had already invaded Nye Tian's body for a long time. Even a divine wheel realm expert should have been turned into ashes by now. Why was Nye Tian able to hold on until now? Moreover, looking at his face, it was only slightly black. It was not fatal. Emosher would never have dreamed that his blood-fiend demonic flame would actually be eaten by the ninth extreme Chaos Beast. At this moment, the ninth extreme Chaos Beast hated Emosher to death. How could he actually let him eat such a disgusting thing? Everyone on the battlefield looked up at the two people in the sky. No one expected that this battle would actually be so intense. One had to know that both Nye Tian and Emosher were only at the giant spirit realm. Who would have thought that a battle between giant spirit realm experts could also be so earth-shattering? "Since you can't bear to kill me, then let me kill you." Nye Tian was full of fighting spirit. The absolute heaven-sword in his hand suddenly trembled, and a clear and intense sword mark appeared like a rooster breaking through the dawn. The sword light whizzed out, and as the sword aura swept across, countless sword shadows pressed down on Emosher like a storm. As the sword aura surged, the sword heart on Nye Tian's forehead actually expanded a little, and there were faint signs of a breakthrough. At this moment, Nye Tian suddenly felt the 9 essence meridians in his body suddenly expand a little, like 9 flood dragons entrenched in his body. "I've made a breakthrough!" Nye Tian exclaimed as he came to a sudden realization. He never expected that his strength would actually advance by one stage in the midst of battle. Yeah! The ninth extreme Chaos Beast seemed to have also sensed it. Although its face was still in pain, its huge eyes revealed a hint of surprise. Nye Tian immediately understood that the ninth extreme Chaos Beast must have swallowed the blood-fiend demonic flame and turned it into endless essence force, causing it to directly break through. Chapter 372. Boom! The demonic edge swept up the dark clouds, and a mass of black gas burst out, breaking through Nye Tian's sword shadow array and bombarding him with tyrannical force. Nye Tian turned pale with fright. He activated the extreme wood celestial battle armor, and a layer of sword chi surrounded his body, forming a sword shadow shield. Bang! Even so, when the dark clouds pressed down, Nye Tian was still blasted away, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. The proud sword wings behind Nye Tian suddenly spread open, stirring up a fierce astral wind in midair. Only then did he manage to stabilize himself. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his face was fearless. His entire body's battle intent almost solidified, and the sword chi filled the air again. His wings whistled, and his figure turned into a shadow in the air, fearlessly stabbing towards Emosher's sword. Boom! In the air, Nye Tian's 9 yuan meridians were operating crazily, and at the same time, he activated the power of 1,280,000 stars. The wildest, proudest, and sharpest sword chi burst out, surging 1,000 meters away, and the surrounding space was suddenly pulled tight by the power of this sword. Sky-piercing sword! A crazy roar of anger dissipated in the fierce astral wind. This collision of swords was truly a battle of life and death. Facing Nye Tian's powerful attack, Emosher did not dodge. There was not a trace of emotion on his cold face, and the ruthlessness in his eyes was indifference to the world. Demonic will shakes the heavens. A deep roar of anger sounded like surging thunder. The wings of doomsday behind Emosher's back suddenly flapped, and his figure whistled out. The demonic flame edge began to release endless blood-fiend power, enveloping 1,000 meters of space. The blood-fiend power and the extreme sword chi clashed, and the space immediately became chaotic. A clear sword hum and a strange demonic voice sounded at the same time, mixing into an ear-piercing battle song. Emoshure's silhouette was extremely quick. He turned into a ball of fire in the sky as his insolent voice rang out, "Nye Tion, I never expected you to have such tyrannical strength. What exactly is there in your body that can resist the baleful blood demon flames?" Nye Tion hovered in midair. The raging astral wind in his ears caused his blood to boil like fire. The astral energy in his body gushed out unceasingly, surging like a raging tsunami. Boundless star energy poured into the sword absolute heaven slash, turning into the most extreme sword chi, sweeping away all the evil demons. In fact, with every breath he took, the blood fiend demon flame in his 9 energy meridians would be completely absorbed, turning into a domineering sword energy. Nye Tion went all out with this sword strike, leaving no room for error. "Doomsday Flame, you'll never know what's in my body," Nye Tion roared. It was a different voice, but it had the same shock. At this moment, everyone looked up into the sky. The 100-meter-long sword shadow and the 100-meter-long spear tip almost destroyed the entire space. Boom! The fiercest collision suddenly rang out. The space within 1,000 meters shook violently, as if it was about to shatter. Nye Tion felt the energy meridians in his body shake violently, and cracks appeared on them from the powerful impact. "My energy meridians!" Nye Tion screamed, and his darkened face turned pale. At the same time, in the galaxy boundary of the 10th energy meridian, the boundary Yuan formation seemed to sense the threat and suddenly sped up. The origin star stone that connected the heavens and the earth suddenly rotated, and in an instant, an endless stream of astral energy gushed out, turning into dark golden blood that flowed in Nye Tion's body, merging with his original blood. As the dark golden blood flowed in, the cracks on the 9 energy meridians healed in the blink of an eye. Nye Tion felt the astral energy in his body increasing, becoming more and more ferocious, to the point where he was actually losing control of it. The sudden burst of power made him feel as if his body had grown taller by a few inches. Nye Tion felt as if he was a giant volcano that could erupt at any moment. After the fiercest collision, Emoshure's figure retreated several hundred meters. The wings of Apocalypse flapped behind him, stabilizing his body, and the way he looked at Nye Tion became strange. To his astonishment, he discovered that even though every single one of his attacks managed to injure Nye Tion, they also stimulated Nye Tion's fiercest power, as if they were essence detonation pills. Emoshure became more and more shocked, and the killing intent in his heart became more and more intense. He guessed that there must be something heaven-defying in Nye Tion's body. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to resist his blood fiend demonic flame and face his demonic flame edge head-on. The demonic flame edge was formed from the Doomsday Heart, and the blood fiend chi it contained was so violent that an ordinary giant spirit realm martial artist would feel suffocated even if they were within 100 meters of it. For Nye Tion to be able to face the demonic flame edge head-on with a rank 5 spirit weapon, on one hand, it showed that his sword chi was powerful, and on the other hand, it also hinted that there was an earth-shattering power hidden in his body. Thinking of this, Emoshure couldn't help but be a little excited and shouted, "Nye Tion, no matter what is in your body, I want it." As Emoshure's extremely arrogant voice fell, the aura of his body erupted like a landslide and a tsunami, and the blood fiend chi surged like boiling ripples. Behind Emoshure, a giant doomsday spirit appeared. It was 300 meters tall, and its whole body was charred black. There were 2 huge death horns on its head, and it looked like a standing bull, releasing a terrible death aura. The demonic wind was cold, and the sky changed color. The space within 5 kilometers was shrouded by the tyrannical demonic energy of the Doomsday Spirit. Suddenly, it was dark, as if Doomsday had arrived. Everyone saw the giant demonic statue in midair, and the shock in their hearts rose to an indescribable level at this moment. The giant true body of a level 3 giant spirit warrior was actually so terrifying that even a spirit wheel realm warrior would be fearful. The eyes of many warriors outside the battlefield became blurred at this moment. Their souls were deeply shocked, and they had the urge to prostrate and worship. Nia Tian, it ends here. Mo Shi's cold and emotionless voice sounded like a judgment from hell, and the terrible death aura spread out uncontrollably. Doomsday spirit, demonic edge blood fiend, world-devouring demonic will, heaven's cry. As Mo Shi's voice fell, the endless blood fiend chi and death demon chi reached its peak, and the space was filled with the smell of blood. In Nye Tian's ears, the wailing of death resounded. He seemed to see corpses strewn all over the field, and the ground was full of a bloody battlefield. This is an illusion. The moment his mind was in turmoil, Nye Tian suddenly came to a realization. The demonic wind was cold, and it almost made him lose his mind. At this time, the doomsday spirit, which was hundreds of meters tall, suddenly ran wildly, like a wild beast, and swooped over. The speed of the doomsday spirit was extremely fast. Its huge body rolled up the clouds in the sky, and its whole body surged with demon flame, turning into a black cloud burning with demon flame, and rushed toward Nye Tian. Chapter 373. The doomsday spirit was like a collapsing mountain, sweeping over majestically. Nye Tian was suppressed by an invisible force, unable to move an inch. The proud sword wings on Nye Tian's back flapped madly, but his body seemed to be firmly grasped by an invisible hand, unable to move an inch. Nye Tian felt that his entire body was enveloped by the blood chi and death devil chi. The empty space around him seemed to have solidified like steel. Not only did it make him unable to move, but it also forcefully pressed against him, as though it wanted to crush his body. Nye Tian's face revealed the most horrified expression. He had never imagined that the doomsday spirit's aura would be so terrifying, almost creating an effect similar to the divine wheel space. Nye Tian, everything is over. Just obediently accept your death. Mo Shi's cold voice rang out, reverberating in Nye Tian's ears, incomparably ear-piercing. Impossible! Nye Tian bellowed in rage. The astral soul tablet within the primal chaos original coffin reacted, and the last astral soul surged out. This was the last astral soul on Nye Tian's body, and it was also the first third-rank astral soul he had ever used. Infernal Ghost Warrior. The power of the third-rank Infernal Ghost Warrior gushed out, and the boundary zone origin formation in the astral river suddenly activated. The origin star stones rotated madly, and waves of astral energy surged out. The aura of Nye Tian's body skyrocketed, as though it was about to break through the limits of his body and explode with the most shocking power. Nye Tian felt the surging power of the Infernal Ghost Warrior, and his body trembled violently. Crack, crack, crack. The solidified space around him cracked like a layer of ice, emitting a crisp sound. Nye Tian's body finally regained the ability to move. Third-rank astral soul, Infernal Ghost Warrior. Let me see your strength. Nye Tian took a deep breath, and the yuan meridians in his body revolved madly again. Waves of astral energy pushed the aura of his body to the limit. Nye Tian estimated that if it wasn't for the fact that he had cultivated the 9 extremities war god art, his current body wouldn't be able to withstand the power of a third-level astral soul. He knew that the Doomsday Spirit was definitely the Doomsday Flame's strongest attack. Mo10 would never use such a terrifying attack unless he was forced to. Doomsday Flame wanted to obtain the thing in Nye Tian's body too much. That hidden terrifying power made him excited, made him go crazy, and made him disregard everything to obtain it. Boom! Nye Tian's aura soared to the limit. His star energy covered the sky and covered the earth. In the space that was enveloped by the demonic death chi and baleful blood chi, specks of starlight appeared. Ha ha ha! Nye Tian, you want to fight my spirit of doomsday with this kind of strength? Simply courting death. However, before he could finish laughing, His expression froze in the next moment. In midair, the specks of starlight that filled the air suddenly expanded and instantly linked together. In the blink of an eye, they actually condensed into a 200-meter-tall armored giant. And in the center of the armored giant's chest, there was an expanding heart. Hell's ghost warrior, containing the heart of hell, condensing the body of a ghost warrior, suppressing hell and sweeping away evil. Tian felt the power of the armored giant in front of him, and his expression froze. He didn't expect that the power of a third-level astral soul would be so terrifying. This was a power that controlled everything and suppressed everything. This is impossible. Mo10 also felt the terrifying aura of the Hell's Ghost Warrior. His crimson eyes suddenly widened, and he didn't dare to believe the scene in front of him. But in the next moment, Mo10 calmed down and smiled. Tian, I don't care how terrifying the thing in your body is. After meeting me, you will die without a doubt. Mo10 had absolute confidence in his spirit of doomsday. Unless it was the spirit wheel space of a spirit wheel expert, it was impossible to block the spirit of doomsday's heaven cry. Roar. The Hell's Ghost Warrior, like an ancient giant, let out a roar to the sky, and then, disregarding everything, rushed forward. In midair, the two giants fought in the most direct and bloody way. Boom! The spirit of doomsday and the Hell's Ghost Warrior collided with each other, and an earth-shaking collision sound rang out. The power that suddenly surged out was enough to destroy heaven and earth. A terrifying wave of air, visible to the naked eye, surged out in all directions from the center of the collision. Bang! Bang! And at the center of the collision, the two horns of death on top of the spirit of doomsday's head instantly broke through the armor of the Hell's Ghost Warrior and directly sank into the latter's huge body. Boom! In the next moment, the most violent explosion sounded, and the Hell's Ghost Warrior actually collapsed. In an instant, countless starlight filled the air, like the stars falling from the sky, sprinkling on the earth. The third-level Hell's Ghost Warrior, in the end, couldn't block the attack of the spirit of doomsday. In the next moment, the speed of the spirit of doomsday slowed down, but it still recklessly rushed towards Tian. 9-level primal chaos beast, come out? Tian had long prepared everything. A crazed roar of rage rang out, and 100-meter-long blood-red gigantic beast appeared behind him. Roar! For the second time, the 9-level primal chaos beast appeared in front of everyone. It raised its head to the sky and let out a roar that pierced through the clouds, like thunder from the 9 heavens, shaking the heavens and earth. The supreme might of a king was instantly revealed. A scarlet-red body, scarlet-red limbs, and even the wings on its back were scarlet-red like blood. The 9-level primal chaos beast stood proudly in the air, like a fiery cloud in the horizon. That kind of overlooking everything, like a king descending from the heavens, was incomparable. Tear it apart. Tian could feel that the aura of the spirit of doomsday was weakened by the Hell's Ghost Warrior, and it was temporarily weakened. This kind of opportunity was fleeting, and he naturally wouldn't miss it. Roar! The 9-level primal chaos beast let out a long roar, its roar piercing through the clouds and shattering rock. Who? The fiery red wings spread out like 2 red curtains that covered the sky. With a sudden shake, the huge body turned into a scarlet-red fireball and whizzed out. The 9-level primal chaos beast suddenly erupted with speed, like a fiery cloud, tearing the heavens and the earth. Boom! The 9-level primal chaos beast and the spirit of doomsday were like 2 wild beasts, colliding in the most heroic way. At the center of the collision, the space within 100 meters became extremely distorted because of the impact of the power of blood, the power of death, the power of stars, and various other powers. One could even see traces of the space moving slowly with the naked eye. Buzz! The extreme distortion of the space let out a deep squeezing sound, as if it was moaning. The next moment, the huge body of the spirit of doomsday flew backward, letting out a terrifying roar in the air. and at the same time, a figure leaped high, the long sword in his hand slashed down from the sky. In midair, the 100-meter sword shadow bombarded down at lightning speed. No! Emosher, who was in the distance, finally reacted at this moment. He let out a painful roar, and the blade of devil flame in his hand rolled out. However, it was too late. The sword's shadow shocked the sky, falling like a mountain or the sea. Boom! With one sword, the spirit of Doomsday was directly cut into two. Boom! The power of blood, the power of death, and the demonic aura turned into turbulent power that dissipated in the air. Chapter 374. The Doomsday Spirit was killed by Nyetian with a single strike. The ferocious evil blood chi and death demon chi dissipated in the air. Impossible! This is impossible! Emosher couldn't believe the scene in front of him, and roared in anger. His Doomsday Spirit was enough to kill any warrior under the Divine Wheel realm. How could it be killed by Nyetian? The power that Nyetian displayed just now was far beyond Emosher's expectations. It had reached a level that he couldn't understand. The scene in the sky completely shocked everyone. At this moment, they could no longer express the shock in their hearts with words and actions. They could only stare blankly at Nyetian, not saying a word and not moving an inch. Doomsday Flame, you lost! Nyetian's loud voice rang out. He moved and attacked Emosher. The Doomsday Spirit was equivalent to Emosher's original spirit. It was directly destroyed by Nyetian. It was when he was at his weakest. If he didn't kill him now, when would he? Nyetian, I admit. Emosher's body trembled. He was about to shout, but Nyetian's sword light had already swept over. Puff! Just one strike directly pierced through Emosher's chest. Emosher's expression was extremely painful. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't make a sound. He didn't expect that he would go through so much trouble to condense a physical body, and then not hesitate to kill his own clone to increase his strength. But in the first battle since he came to the human world, he actually lost, and lost so completely that he even lost his life. Nyetian looked at Emosher and said coldly, Emosher, if you still think that this is just a competition, then you are too naive. The battle between Nyetian and Emosher, on the surface, was just a competition of the dragon blood martial meet. But from the moment the two stepped onto the arena, it was already decided that only one could survive. The next moment, a wave of sword chi surged. Emosher felt a force tearing his body apart. He had tried everything to condense a physical body, but at this moment, he could no longer bear it. Bang! Emosher's body suddenly trembled, and the House of Life exploded. What appeared in midair was not bloodlight, but countless illusory fragments. They were like 7-colored flower petals, blooming with brilliant flames. This was Emosher's true form, the illusory flower blood lotus. The Doomsday Flame, the 13th demon flame on the demon flame list, was finally dead. Countless flames filled the air, instantly forming a sea of fire. Nyetian's body shook. Boundless sword chi surged out and turned into a sword net that enveloped the sea of fire in the air. It then tightened and firmly imprisoned the sea of fire. The 9-extremity chaos beast let out a roar. It opened its mouth and swallowed the flames in the sword net. This was the Doomsday Flame, a flame that could eliminate the power of the blood fiend and the demonic energy of death. It was the purest demonic flame energy. Goo! The 9-extreme chaos beast swallowed the flames and seemed to burp. Then, it opened its mouth and spat out a ball of flames. Little guy, go back. The power of the Doomsday Flame is enough for you to digest for a while. Nyetian smiled faintly. The 9-extremity chaos beast's huge body disappeared. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in the primal chaos original coffin and turned into Little Nine. Little Nine squealed happily, looking unusually excited. Nyetian felt the power in his body suddenly increase by a lot. Looking inside his body, he was shocked to find that his strength had actually increased by another level. The nine-extremity Chaos Beast swallowed the Doomsday Flame and directly integrated a part of its power. In the next period of time, it would completely refine the power of the Doomsday Flame. At that time, Nie Tion's strength would definitely increase again. Nie Tion's figure descended from the sky, his face slightly pale. To defeat the Doomsday Flame, he had used his last 2 star souls and even summoned the nine-extremity Chaos Beast. His essence force had been greatly depleted. Even after he had swallowed the Doomsday Flame's power, his essence force now was less than half. When the judge saw Nie Tion walking over, he stared at him for a long time before he reacted. On the high platform, Duanmu Bai, Elderly, and the rest all had stiff expressions, and their lips were dry. At this moment, Duanmu Bai finally understood why Elderly had previously told him that the latter also did not know what Nie Tion's limit was. In the battle between Nie Tion and Emosher, the battle strength that he had displayed was beyond everyone's imagination. Duanmu Bai estimated that even if Emosher's opponent had been a warrior above the 5th level of the true element realm, he might not have won. Now, Duanmu Bai's feelings towards Nie Tion could be summed up in 4 words: wholeheartedly convinced. Nie Tion was currently only at the 1st level of the giant spirit realm, but he had already reached a level that even true element realm warriors were afraid of. If he advanced to the true element realm, wouldn't he be able to challenge spirit wheel realm warriors? The battle between Emosher and Nie Tion had caused a huge commotion. After a long time, it slowly calmed down. Next, it was the final showdown, the battle for the champion of the Dragon Blood martial meet. Bang! Zhao Kuo's figure jumped down from the high platform and landed heavily on the arena. The final battle for the champion would be personally judged by Zhao Kuo. He glanced at Nie Tion and Long Sky, who nodded slightly. Dragon Blood martial meet, the final battle for the champion. Nie Tion versus Long Sky. Zhao Kuo announced loudly, his voice like a clap of thunder. As Zhao Kuo walked down, Nie Tion and Long Sky's figures leaped up at the same time and landed on the arena at the same time. Long Haotian looked at Nie Tion with a somewhat complicated expression on his face. He had also been shaken by the battle just now. If he was the one fighting Emosher just now, he might already be a corpse by now. Emosher's speed was very fast, and the Blood Fiend Demon Flame was very strange. Even his Blade Dragon arm could not defend against it. Long Sky could not understand what kind of power was hidden in Nie Tion's body. He could even defend against that suffocating demon flame. It was simply unimaginable. Especially the red giant beast origin spirit that appeared behind Nie Tion at the end. That domineering and indomitable aura made people feel fear and worship. Composing himself, Long Sky's eyes flashed with killing intent. He said in a cold voice, Nie Tion, I did not think that you would still dare to stand on the arena. In the battle with Emosher, you have already used up too much spirit energy. I think that your trump card is almost used up. I am very curious, what will you use to fight against my Blade Dragon arm next? Are you worried about me? Nie Tion smiled faintly, a teasing smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. Long Sky's Blade Dragon arm was indeed frightening. Even Nie Tion was deeply afraid of it. The power of the Blade Dragon arm was completely different from Emosher's Blood Fiend Demon Flame. The Blade Dragon arm was the purest power and did not contain any spirit energy. Even the power of the stars could not suppress the power of the Blade Dragon arm. If it was Emosher against Long Sky, he had a high chance of winning. But if it was Nie Tion, he did not have much of a chance of winning. Long Sky smiled coldly. The coldness in his eyes intensified and condensed into the most direct killing intent. He roared, I am worried that you will die a horrible death. Boom. Long Sky stretched out his left arm and the Azure Dragon seal on the Blade Dragon arm was instantly released. The Blade Dragon arm that was covered in black dragon scales appeared again. Chapter 375. With the reappearance of the dragon blade arm, Nye Tian could feel a burst of power surging towards him. The dragon blade arm was one of the legendary four great mysterious arms, rumored to have the power to split the heavens and earth. Previously, Tong Fu was defeated by a single punch from the dragon blade arm and almost died tragically. This was enough to show how terrifying the dragon blade arm was. However, the current Nye Tian was very confident in his absolute strength. After absorbing a portion of the Doomsday Flame's energy, Nye Tian's strength had reached the third stage of the giant spirit state, and the raw star stone in his body had awakened the power of 2.56 million stars. At this moment, Nye Tian could explode with the power of one dragon even without using any martial techniques. He could tell that Long Sky's dragon blade arm only had one of the 9 dragon seals opened, so his strength should only be that of one dragon. Therefore, in a competition of absolute strength, Nye Tian was not afraid of the dragon blade arm. What he was worried about was the dragon blade arm awakening its supernatural power. In fact, the dragon blade arm was also a type of innate spirit body, but this spirit body was only an arm. Nye Tian City Lord, are you ready? Long Sky smiled coldly, releasing the most decisive killing intent. In the next moment, without waiting for Nye Tian to speak, the giant dragon blade arm had already attacked. The instantaneous burst of power actually produced dazzling sparks in the air. Nye Tian stomped his feet fiercely, his eyes flashing with the sharpest determination. He had no intention of retreating. The yuan meridians in his body revolved wildly, and the power of the stars surged out. Then, he punched out, and a giant fist shadow appeared in the air, whistling through the air. Courting death. Long Sky saw that not only did Nye Tian not dodge, but he actually chose to meet the attack head-on. This made him sneer in his heart, full of killing intent. The ferocity of the dragon blade arm was not something that could be resisted by flesh and blood. Long Sky had seen Nye Tian's terrifying strength. Using his full strength, he could create a 1.5-meter fist mark on the Qiankuan stone. However, such power was still unable to withstand a single blow from the dragon arm saber. Buzz! It was the fiercest collision. Although the two of them were made of flesh and blood, their fists seemed to be made of steel. The sound of metal colliding rang out. At the center of the collision, dazzling sparks appeared. The direct confrontation of flesh and blood was an absolute clash of strength. Bang! In the next moment, a sudden counterforce surged out, and Nye Tian felt a heart-wrenching pain from his arm. Immediately after, his figure was sent flying by the impact. Then, he looked at Long Sky, who took 3 steps back before regaining his balance, completely unscathed. Dragon Sky, the strength of the blade dragon arm is only SOSO. The proud sword heavenly wings appeared on Nye Tian's back as he stood in mid-air and shouted. After clashing head-on with Dragon Sky's fist, Nye Tian felt as if his entire arm was about to be crippled. He felt a wave of numbness and was about to lose consciousness. The power of 2,560,000 stars is still not enough to contend against the blade dragon arm. Although he was mocking Long Tian on the surface, Nye Tian was extremely shocked. The strength of the blade dragon arm was beyond his expectations. In the previous head-on collision, Nye Tian wanted to test the limits of the blade dragon arm, but the result surprised him even more. The strength of the blade dragon arm was definitely above the power of one dragon. Once again realizing the horror of the blade dragon arm, Nye Tian's face did not show the slightest fear. Instead, his eyes were filled with an even stronger desire. Previously, Nye Tian had only heard of the blade dragon arm and had never seen it with his own eyes. Now that he had seen it with his own eyes and personally verified its strength, how could he let it go? If Long Sky was a gentleman, it would be fine if the blade dragon arm was in his hands. Unfortunately, he was a member of the Heaven Burial Association, the second dark force in the 3,000 small world. Therefore, This blade dragon arm was something that Nie Tian was determined to obtain. Nie Tian, do you really think that the blade dragon arm only has this kind of strength? Long Sky's ruthless voice could be heard as he stretched out the blade dragon arm. Streams of dragon aura were unleashed, covering the sky and land like rolling clouds. Blade dragon wings. The dragon aura surged out and formed a pair of black Qilin wings on Long Sky's back. Phew! Phew! The blade dragon wings spread out, causing Long Sky's aura to increase in quality. The surrounding space instantly tightened, producing a strange moan sound. Nie Tian, you will soon find out that the strength of the blade dragon arm is beyond your imagination. Long Sky's figure soared into the sky and stood opposite Nie Tian. His face was filled with a ferocious, murderous intent. Nie Tian slightly stretched his arm, activating the star force. The numbness immediately disappeared. He let out a calm smile and said in a cold voice, "The stronger the strength of the blade dragon arm, the better." The light of desire in Nie Tian's eyes was so obvious that it was on the verge of bursting out. Ha ha! Sensing Nie Tian's evil intention, Long Sky burst out laughing and yelled, "Nie Tian, how dare you covet my blade dragon arm? I can only say that you're thinking too much." Following the wild laughter, Long Sky lashed out a punch. An overbearing fist shadow surged forward like a tsunami, with the vague silhouette of a blue dragon appearing. The force of the punch shook the heavens and earth, stirring up a strong gust of wind. A whistling sound was heard, mixed with the roar of an ancient dragon. Countless invisible wind blades sliced through the air, aiming at Nie Tian. Nie Tian didn't show any fear, nor did he try to dodge. Instead, he slashed his heaven-slash sword down from the sky. 100-meter-long sword shadow whizzed through the air, along with a terrifying sword chi that engulfed all of the incoming wind blades. In the next second, the fist shadow arrived, accompanied by the roar of an ancient dragon that shook the heavens and earth. Bang! Nie Tian activated the extreme wood emerald battle armor. His figure was knocked a few hundred meters backward before he could stabilize his footing. Following this, he spat out a mouthful of blood. The battle against Mo10 had consumed a huge amount of Nie Tian's origin force. Each slash he executed was a great challenge to his body's limit. Under such circumstances, even the 3 seals of the divine god of battle would not have any effect. How is it? Are you satisfied with the power of the blade dragon arm? Long Sky let out a hideous grin as his figure sprang forward with a ferocious, murderous intent. Nie Tian frowned slightly and mumbled in his heart, "It seems like I'll have to show my true strength." Bang! 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 As Long Sky's figure sprang forward, a strange sight took place all of a sudden. Nie Tian's figure was emitted a tremendous sword intent, each of which took the shape of a human. One after another, the human-shaped sword chi flowed in all directions, filling the air with surging sword chi. Upon a closer look, they looked exactly like Nie Tian. This is... Long Sky was stunned by the sight before him. His figure halted, not daring to act recklessly. Nie Tian's strength was strange to begin with. Long Sky could not help but be cautious after witnessing the strange sight before him. Long Haotian, you're indeed cautious. This time, you're going to lose because of your cautiousness. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth curled up into a sinister smile, as if he was hatching some kind of scheme. Previously, during the battle between Nie Tian and Long Sky, the latter was too cautious, thus he was caught off guard by Nie Tian. Chapter 376. Dragon Sky looked at the humanoid sword chi around Nie Tian and seemed to understand something. A look of horror appeared on his face. 2 words appeared in his mind: sword spirit, doppelganger. It was rumored that a grandmaster swordsman who had comprehended the supreme sword Dao could use his own sword chi to form a sword spirit clone. Moreover, the sword spirit doppelganger was different from ordinary doppelganger martial skills. Every sword spirit doppelganger could inherit all of the swordsman's strength and even martial skills. However, Nie Tian was merely a sword-heart swordsman. How could he possibly condense a sword-spirit doppelganger? This was absolutely impossible. Although Long Sky did not cultivate the sword Dao, he cultivated the saber Dao. The saber Dao and the sword Dao were different paths that led to the same goal. With his saber intent cultivation, he couldn't even reach the threshold of the saber spirit doppelganger. How could Nie Tian, a sword-heart swordsman, condense a sword-spirit doppelganger? Don't even think about it. This is a sword-chi doppelganger. Nie Tian saw through Long Sky's surprise and said provocatively, Sword-chi doppelganger? This was the first time Long Sky had heard of this name. The shock on his face was even more obvious. He thought to himself, is this kid trying to scare me? I'm a saber-intent saber wielder. Why can't I form a saber-chi clone? This time, Nie Tian really didn't lie. What gushed out of his body was indeed a sword-chi clone. Condensing a human form with pure sword chi and supreme sword Dao was far inferior to the sword spirit doppelganger, but it was more than enough to frighten others. However, Nie Tian expended all his essence energy to condense 12 sword chi clones, and it was not as simple as just bluffing. Seeing that Nie Tian seemed to be thinking about something, Long Sky did not give him the chance to do so. He roared, and his aura grew stronger. A dragon-head tyrant saber appeared in his hand, and a ferocious saber chi spread out, covering the surrounding 1 kilometer. Nie Tian, no matter what tricks you play, you won't be able to escape death today. Long Sky's face was ferocious and terrifying. He slashed out with his dragon-head tyrant saber, and a 100-meter-long saber shadow descended. It was extremely imposing and powerful, pressing down on Nie Tian. The 12 sword chi clones around Nie Tian soared into the sky. His main body blasted out with absolute heaven slash, and a 100-meter-long sword shadow instantly condensed. Boom! The saber and the sword clashed, and a loud sound rang out. Waves of shockwaves spread out, and even the spectators who were thousands of meters away could feel the howling winds. Nie Tian's figure was once again sent flying, and he couldn't stop spitting out blood from his mouth. However, the corners of his mouth raised into a strange arc, as if everything was within his calculations. Long Sky took a few steps back and steadied himself. He laughed hysterically, "Ha ha! Nie Tian, let's see how long you can last." At this moment, Dragon Sky could feel that Nie Tian's aura was getting weaker and weaker. This was obviously a sign that his elemental energy was running out. Hence, every clash of moves at this time was very advantageous to Long Sky. His strength was at the 9th level of the Giant Soul Realm, which was much higher than Nie Tian in the first place. In addition, he had rested for quite some time previously. Currently, his elemental energy was abundant, and he did not care about his elemental energy consumption at all. But it was completely different for Nie Tian. The battle with Mo sure exhausted a large amount of his elemental energy. At this time, every time he clashed with Long Haotian, he would be unable to cope. If this carried on, in less than 10 moves, Nie Tian's elemental energy would definitely be depleted. A martial artist without elemental energy was still at the mercy of others. However, just as Long Sky's soft voice had yet to fade, his expression suddenly stiffened. 12 heaven-slaying sword formation, open! Nie Tian wiped away the fresh blood at the corner of his mouth, and his face revealed a sinister smile. Following the sound of Nie Tian's voice falling, within a few hundred meters around Long Sky, 12 gigantic sword images suddenly appeared, crossing heaven and earth, forming an encircling posture, encircling Long Sky in the center. The 12 sword images were like enormous pillars connecting to the sky. Sword intent surged, and sword chi was thick, enveloping Long Sky. What's this? Long Sky was quite taken aback. A saber slashed out and struck on the sword formation. It was actually like a clay ox entering the sea, vanishing without a trace. When Ye Tian saw that the 12 heaven-slaying sword formation was activated and trapped Long Sky, he could not help heaving a sigh in his heart. 12 heaven-slaying sword formation was one of the 3 great sword formations in the Ao sword art. The Ao sword art was a super heaven-grade sword art. The 3 great sword formations contained within were all existences comparable to Tier 9 spiritual arrays. The 12 heaven-slaying sword formation that Nye Tian set up at this time was naturally not a Tier 9 spiritual array. If it really was a Tier 9 spiritual array, Long Sky would be destroyed to pieces in the blink of an eye. The true 12 heaven-slaying sword formation could only be activated by 12 profound true bodies. At this moment, Nye Tian had used 12 sword chi clones to activate the 12 heaven-slaying sword formation, so it could only be regarded as a semi-finished product. But even a semi-finished 12 heaven-slaying sword formation could barely have the effect of a Tier 4 spiritual array. A Tier 4 spiritual array, not to mention trapping a giant spirit realm martial artist, even a true energy realm martial artist would find it difficult to break the spiritual array. Just now, when Nye Tian and Long Sky clashed head-on, it was to attract the latter's attention. Otherwise, how could his 12 heaven-slaying sword formation trap the latter so easily? However, the power of the 12 heaven-slaying sword formation did not just trap Long Sky. At this moment, the 12 sword images outside the sword formation spun wildly, forming a huge sword formation vortex in the center. The heaven and earth spiritual energy within the surrounding 10,000 meters seemed to collapse, crazily pouring into the sword formation vortex. It was obvious that the 12 heaven-slaying sword formation was absorbing the heaven and earth spiritual energy. And this absorbed heaven and earth spiritual energy was all gathered into the 12 sword chi clones at the top of the sword formation, then transmitted into Nye Tian's body. This was only the lowest level of the 12 heaven-slaying sword formation. If it was the true 12 heaven-slaying sword formation, it would have sword images that were tens of thousands of meters long. When the sword formation fully unfolded, it would be thousands of miles wide. Anyone caught in the sword formation would instantly have their origin energy sucked dry. Everything was within Nye Tian's calculations. Long Sky dashed left and right in the sword formation, slashing at the sword formation again and again. The saber chi that erupted became nourishment for the sword formation, making the entire sword formation even more unbreakable. Impossible! Shrouded by a terrifying sword chi, Long Sky felt an invisible force being exerted on his body. The origin energy in his body was actually leaking out uncontrollably. He was unwilling to believe what was happening in front of him, and he roared violently. The scene in the sky caused everyone's expression to change again. What a terrifying sword formation! Although Duanmu Bai was not a swordsman, he was an expert in the spirit wheel realm. Even though he was tens of thousands of meters away from the sword formation, he could still feel the terrifying power that was gushing out from the sword formation. At this moment, he did not know how to describe the shock in his heart. In his heart, Nye Tian had risen to an unreachable height. He was like a god that could only be looked up to and not touched. What a terrifying sword essence! Elderly was also deeply moved. Nye Tian had brought him too many shocks and once again refreshed his understanding of martial arts. At the same time, among the crowd outside the battleground, a middle-aged warrior in black looked at the scene in the sky. His face was slightly shocked, but he did not panic at all. He thought to himself, Nye Tian's strength is indeed strange and unpredictable. It seems that it will not be easy for Long Qi to win. Young Master Long Qi, it is time to show your true strength. Long Qi was another name for Long Sky. Chapter 377. Wei Yangzi thought to himself. He looked at the sword formation in the sky expectantly. The 12 heaven-slaying sword formation was terrifying. However, Wei Yangzi knew that a rank 4 spiritual formation was not enough to trap the legendary dragon arm. The reason why Wei Yangzi trusted Long Sky so much was because he knew the latter's strength very well. Unless Nye Tian could unleash the strength of a spirit wheel practitioner, he would definitely not be a match for Long Sky. In the sky, Long Sky's face was hideous and terrifying. He was on the verge of insanity. He did not expect that he would be forced into such a corner by Nye Tian. Long Sky, I want your dragon arm. Nye Tian's figure approached and his voice was cold and emotionless. Don't even think about it. Long Sky was completely enraged. He let out a deep roar. In the next moment, Long Haotian went berserk. Like a wild beast, all the hair on his body stood on end. He extended his dragon arms and released waves of dragon chi. The ferocious aura attacked the 12 heavens slaying sword formation. Nye Tian felt that the sword formation was shaking violently. There were signs that it was going to break. Very good. It's time to end this. Realizing this, Nye Tian no longer hesitated. His cold voice sounded like a death knell from hell. After absorbing the spiritual energy within 10,000 meters, Nye Tian's elemental energy had recovered to its peak. The next move would be the one that would take Long Sky's life. Long Sky, prepare to die. The thunderous voice contained the sharpest murderous intent. As Nye Tian's voice fell, endless sword essence gathered in the 12 heavens slaying sword formation. The 12 heavens slaying sword formation suddenly sped up. The spiritual energy in the sword formation quickly gathered into the 12 sword energy clones at the top of the sword formation. Poof, poof, poof. After absorbing enough sword chi, the 12 sword chi doppelgangers rapidly returned to Nye Tian's true form. The next moment, 12 huge sword shadows rose into the sky. Nye Tian stood at the top of the sword formation like a demon god from hell. Proud sword skill, sky-piercing sword. An imposing voice rang out. Nye Tian did not wait any longer. The proud sword heavenly wings appeared on his back. With a flap of the wings, he dove down and stabbed out with his sword. Instantly, rolling sword chi surged out like a collapsing mountain and a roaring sea. Just as Nye Tian struck with his sword, the 12 sword shadows around him instantly condensed and strengthened the heavenly chop of sword extinction. Suddenly, a 1,000-meter-long sword that connected the heavens and the earth was formed. Like a giant beast descending from the sky, it swept up the scattered clouds in all directions and brought with it a fierce gale. Come on! Come on! I will let you see the true power of the dragon arm blade. Below, Long Sky looked as though he had gone mad. His eyes were bloodshot on his ferocious face, and his blade-like arms suddenly expanded. Crack! Crack! Pitter-patter! There was a cracking sound in the air. The blade-like arm was like a silkworm turning into a butterfly or a snake shedding its skin. It broke through the shackles of the dragon's scales and suddenly expanded. In the blink of an eye, the originally 3-meter-long blade-like arm had extended to 10 meters long. Long Sky's tall and straight body seemed extremely small in front of the huge blade-like arm. Wrath of the Green Dragon. The blade-like arm suddenly struck out, and Long Sky's figure soared into the sky. Roar! A deep and powerful dragon roar rang out, and immediately, a giant green dragon roared out. The giant green dragon was hundreds of meters long, and its body was dark green with a hint of black. Its huge dragon head could almost break through the restraints of space. Its bloodshot eyes were like the sun and the moon, looking down on everything in the world. In an instant, the billowing dragon chi spread out majestically. The giant green dragon's body was like a giant tree that reached the sky, and it soared into the sky. Nye Tian instantly realized what was going on as he sensed the vigorous aura assaulting his face. I can't believe he has unsealed the second seal on his dragon arm. All this while, he had thought that Long Sky's blade-like arm had only unlocked the first of the 9 green dragon seals. He had never thought that Long Sky had actually unlocked the second green dragon seal. The unlocking of the second green dragon seal meant that the blade-like arm's absolute strength had reached the strength of 10 dragons. Even a martial artist at the peak of the true energy realm might not have the strength of 10 dragons. It was undoubtedly too late for him to realize this. At this moment, he could only fight with his life on the line. There was no other way out. Nie Tian was still at a disadvantage because he was not familiar with the blade-like arm. He had only heard of the blade-like arm before, but had never seen it with his own eyes. Therefore, he had no way of knowing how many green dragon seals Long Sky had unlocked. The giant sword swooped down. The majestic green dragon rose against the momentum. In the next moment, the most violent collision occurred. Kaboom! There was a loud noise, as if a heavy mountain had crashed to the ground. The space within a few thousand meters shook, and the roaring power surged in all directions. Everyone on the scene was startled by the strong gust of wind blowing toward them. The power of Nie Tian's sword was too terrifying, and the blade-like arm's power was even more unimaginable. When the two destructive forces collided, there could only be one word to describe it: tragic. In midair, the space was chaotic, as if it had fallen into a thick fog. After a long time, the rolling waves gradually dissipated, and two figures appeared in front of everyone again. Nie Tian's face was as white as a sheet, and there were blood stains on the corner of his mouth. His clothes were tattered, and he looked very disheveled. The sword just now had almost exhausted all the power of Nie Tian's 12 heaven-punishing sword formation, but even under such circumstances, he still could not kill Long Sky. Looking at Long Sky, although he was also disheveled, his aura was getting fiercer and fiercer. The 10-meter blade-like arm extended in the air, carrying with it a thick aura of death, as if it was mocking Nie Tian's weakness. Nie Tian. Suddenly, Long Sky's voice rang out, and an arrogant aura filled the air. He laughed unscrupulously. "I admit your strength is beyond my expectations. Unfortunately, the power of the blade-like arm is beyond your imagination. This time you will die for sure." Phew! Nie Tian wiped the blood stains on the corner of his mouth, and let out a deep breath. His expression became a little more relaxed. It was not easy for him to withstand the collision just now and not be seriously injured. However, to defeat Long Sky, it would be difficult, very difficult. Long Sky, there is no winner between us. What I said just now is still valid. Your blade-like arm is mine, Nie Tian said calmly. His eyes were filled with confidence, but at the same time, they were filled with the coldest murderous intent. Long Sky's heart skipped a beat when he sensed the strong confidence in Nie Tian's eyes, but he quickly regained his composure and burst out laughing. Nie Tian, at this stage, do you think you can still defeat me? It's not that I can, I definitely can, I definitely can. Nie Tian let out a calm smile. Even without the slightest bit of primary force, his domineering aura was still shocking. How presumptuous! Long Haotian let out a thunderous roar. Nie Tian, I'll show you how formidable the Blade Dragon arm is after breaking the second seal of the Azure Dragon is. Following his furious voice, Long Sky's blade-like arm was fully extended. The sharp dragon claws emitted an icy glow, as a boiling dragon chi was fired into the sky. Nie Tian, I did not want to use this move, but you forced me to. Long Sky's voice was extremely cold, as a firm murderous intent could be felt. Chapter 378. Bang! Long Sky's aura skyrocketed as a shocking dragon aura was emitted, causing the vague silhouette of a dragon's head and dragon scales to appear in the air. Dragon aura, it was real dragon aura. After breaking the seal of the Azure Dragon on the arm of the Saber Dragon, it was able to absorb the spiritual chi of the heavens and earth to produce real dragon aura. This was the power that belonged to a godly dragon. Even though it was only a hint of aura, the overwhelming aura was enough to send chills down one's spine. It seems like I have no other choice. Nie Tian frowned slightly after seeing Long Sky's aura. At this moment, He had no other choice but to use the 3 seals of the divine god of battle. Nie Tian's figure stood in the air with a cold expression, like the god of slaughter descending upon the mortal realm, without the slightest hint of human emotion. He performed a hand seal, causing the primary meridians in his body to circulate rapidly, causing his primary force to surge out. The following moment would decide his life and death. Nie Tian's blood was boiling, as every inch of his flesh and every bone was squeezed out the last bit of energy. Without sufficient primary force, Nie Tian had no choice but to push his body to the limit. As the hand seals were completed, the space around him began to change. The force of the heavens and earth tilted eerily, as if the space had collapsed, as boundless spiritual chi of the heavens and earth surged into Nie Tian's body. The eerie scene once again shocked the crowd. The boundless spiritual chi of the heavens and earth surged into Nie Tian's body like an invisible spring. He was currently a vortex that absorbed the spiritual chi of the heavens and earth. At a certain moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt the primal star boulder in his body emit a sudden glow. Bang! Sensing it, the realm origin formation suddenly let out a loud roar, and the speed of its operation suddenly increased. Immediately, the origin star stone that connected the Milky Way turned like a huge drill. The space of the boundary formation suddenly brightened, as the stars in the first heavenly river began to flicker. It was as if countless stars were falling from the sky, igniting the star energy on the primal star boulder. The star energy is awakening. Upon realizing this, Nie Tian's face was filled with astonishment, which was soon replaced by joy. Originally, the power of the stars would only awaken when Nie Tian's strength increased. At this moment it actually began to awaken on its own. In an instant, surging energy surged into his Dantian Yuan meridian like a river bursting through a dam. Nie Tian felt a power that almost made him explode. The amazement in his heart reached its peak. A vigorous life energy slowly flowed out of the star stone, turning into dark golden blood that flowed into Nie Tian's meridians. It's that dark golden blood again. Nie Tian suddenly remembered that when he was fighting against Emoshur, the origin star stone had also flowed with this kind of dark golden blood. It was the purest aura of life, as if it was the ruler of everything. Nie Tian could faintly sense that the dark golden blood was slowly changing his physique. He didn't have time to think too much. This was a moment of life and death, and he couldn't afford to be distracted. Nie Tian frantically absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The spiritual energy around him was so dense that it was about to liquefy into water. On the other side, Long Sky's aura had also reached its peak. Nie Tian could clearly sense a huge pressure coming from Long Sky's body. It was almost impossible to resist, as if it really was the power of a divine dragon. Nie Tian, are you still going to fight back at this moment? Long Sky sensed the change in the aura of heaven and earth around him. His hideous face roared, "You're too childish. In front of my heaven-defying dragon soul, you will definitely die." Boom! As the last words left his mouth, Long Sky's aura suddenly exploded. Waves of irresistible energy surged out of him. Dragon chi surged and compressed space. Long Sky's body was enveloped in endless dragon chi. His aura rose to a height that was different from before. Bang! Bang! 2 explosions rang out in the air. It was as if a huge force had been forcefully torn apart. The seal of the Azure Dragon has been completely opened. Nie Tian immediately understood what had happened. His face changed slightly and the elemental meridians in his body started to circulate even more frantically. Now both of them were gathering their aura. Whoever's aura was faster and stronger would be able to grasp the opportunity to win. Kaboom! Countless green dragon patterns suddenly appeared on Long Sky's body. The dragon patterns floated in the air and surged continuously. In an instant, a giant green dragon was formed. The giant green dragon that Long Haotian had just punched out was just a shadow. Now, the dragon that he had condensed was closer to a real entity. Within the giant dragon body, the dragon chi surged, causing the green dragon soul to almost condense into a real entity. The dragon's shape was so realistic that it was almost real. There was a rumor in the heaven realm that once the 9 seals of the blade dragon arm were completely opened, the complete power of the Azure Dragon would be released. The Azure Dragon was one of the 4 top ancient dragon clans. Its true power was not inferior to the legendary king of the dragon clan, the Golden Giant Dragon. Rumor had it that the ancient dragon clan was an existence that surpassed the 9th rank spiritual beast. It was unknown how the ancient human clan could survive under the threat of the dragon clan. Roar! The blade dragon arm defying sky dragon's soul roared out. A majestic dragon roar resounded through the sky and pierced through the clouds. It was like the call of an ancient giant beast. It actually made people see a scene of the Azure Dragon galloping in front of them. Nye Tian, it's time to say goodbye. The defying sky dragon soul's giant body rolled, and a huge aura pressed down. Suddenly, the space around them almost collapsed. Everyone was stunned. They couldn't imagine that a warrior of the 9th rank of the giant spirit realm could actually explode with such terrifying power. This power. Duanmu Bai was also stunned. Everything was too unexpected. The appearance of the blade dragon arm defying sky dragon soul, that kind of tyrannical aura could only be resisted by a warrior of the spirit wheel stage. Outside the martial field, Wei Yangzi, who was hiding in the crowd, revealed a smile. He already knew that the blade dragon arm defying sky dragon soul would not let him down. The Heaven Burial Society was the most mysterious organization in the 3,000 small world. As a member of the Heaven Burial Society, the reason why Long Sky appeared at the Dragon Blood martial meet was obviously for the dragon blood. To other warriors, the dragon blood was just something to increase their strength. But to Long Sky, who had the blade dragon arm defying sky, it was even more important, because the dragon blood could help him open the Azure Dragon seal faster. As long as he could open the 3rd Azure Dragon seal, even if he only had the strength of a giant spirit realm, he would dare to fight with a warrior of the spirit wheel stage. Nye Tian, you didn't expect this, right? It's impossible for you to win against me. Long Sky's arrogant laughter was accompanied by the rumbling dragon roar. It was as if his entire being could fuse with the defying sky dragon soul. His laughter floated in the air, as if it could shatter the void. Facing Long Sky's provocation, Nye Tian didn't care and continued to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The defying sky dragon soul was Long Sky's ultimate move. If he couldn't resist it, he would definitely die. The giant dragon body whizzed out. Soaring dragon energy shrouded from all directions. The majestic aura of destruction pressed down. Chapter 379. The dragon's soul swept across the world. The moment the dragon's soul pressed down on Nye Tian, its murderous aura spread out and shrouded the space. Puff, puff, puff. Countless wind blades came at Nye Tian's face, cutting deep and shallow wounds on his body. But his expression remained unchanged, like a devil who despised the world. No matter how violent the storm was, he would not move. In the void, the dragon roared, which seemed to be mixed with endless ghost cries and wolf howls, making people couldn't help but imagine the scene of hell's execution ground. 100 meters, 50 meters, 30 meters, 10 meters. The dragon's soul was getting closer and closer to Nye Tian, but the latter didn't care at all, and even closed his eyes for a moment. In Nye Tian's body, the domain origin formation in the star domain was operating to its peak, and the endless star domain was filled with a deafening roar. Torrential life power surged out of the origin star stone as the dark golden blood flowed within Nye Tian's veins, merging perfectly with his bloodline. At this moment, Nye Tian felt that the power of his whole body had reached its peak. Flowing killing seal, open. Finally, when the heaven-defying dragon soul was 5 meters away from Nye Tian, a voice that was so calm that it made people's hair stand on end. Boom! Immediately, the power of Nye Tian's whole body burst out, and in the air, a huge handprint appeared. The next moment was the moment of life and death. Even if he was smashed to pieces, he must not retreat. At this moment, everyone's pupils suddenly dilated, and one word was written in their eyes: shock. Indescribable shock. No words could express the shock in their hearts. At this moment, Dragon Sky also sensed the danger, and there was an unconcealable panic in his eyes. Under the flowing killing seal, there is no life left. Nye Tian's cold voice sounded, like a death knell, sounding the road of no return for Dragon Sky. Boom! The dragon soul and the flowing killing seal collided. Roar! The dragon soul's majestic dragon roar sounded again, but this time it was the last cry. Bang! Bang! The sky-defying dragon soul and the drifting killing seal collapsed almost at the same time. Suddenly, all kinds of power surged out. Dark clouds, astral winds, space power, star power, heaven and earth spiritual power, dragon chi, dragon souls, and countless other powers burst forth with dazzling light. Boom! 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 The billowing airwaves came one after another. At the center of the collision, two streaks of bloody light streaked across the sky. Nye Tian and Dragon Sky were both sent flying. Nye Tian withstood the impact of the endless waves of qi. The clothes on his body were torn apart, and the skin on his body couldn't withstand the violent impact. Lines of blood appeared on his skin. At this critical moment, Nye Tian used his last bit of essence energy to prop up the extreme wood jade sky armor. Bang! 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 The dense waves of air were like sharp blades in the wind as they struck the heavenly wood armor, producing dull sounds of impact. Nye Tian violently shook the proud sword wings on his back, and finally stabilized his body. At this moment, his face was pale, and his face was densely covered with bloody wounds. His whole body was covered with lines of different depths of blood. On the other side, Dragon Sky suddenly opened the blade dragon wings on his back, and finally stabilized his body. But at this moment, he was extremely embarrassed. His whole body was dripping with blood, especially the blade dragon arm. The dragon's scales were rolling up, and his whole arm was dyed red with blood. It was very frightening. Why? Dragon Sky ignored the pain all over his body, and stared at Nye Tian with bloodshot eyes. He couldn't believe the scene in front of him, and roared, "This is impossible! My sky-defying dragon soul is enough to kill a true elemental tier 5 expert. You can't possibly block it." I said, "Your blade dragon arm, I want it." Nye Tian's figure swept over. Although he was already at the limit of his body, the killing intent in his eyes was even more resolute. He could already see that at this moment, Dragon Sky had no strength to fight back. Originally, forcibly using the second Azure Dragon seal on the blade dragon arm was not a small burden for Dragon Sky, not to mention that his sky-defying dragon soul had been shattered by Nye Tian. Although the strongest move between the two of them was a lose-lose, Nye Tian paid a smaller price. Dragon Sky put away the blade dragon arm, and his eyes suddenly looked somewhere outside the battlefield, and then he stared at Nye Tian and growled in a low voice, "Nye Tian, do you really dare to kill me? You know my identity. If you dare to kill me, I guarantee that Heaven Luo City will become a cemetery the next day." Humph! Nye Tianling smiled, but the killing intent in his eyes was even heavier. He said coldly, "At this moment, do you think this kind of trick of threatening a little kid will work on me? Today, if Nye Tian let Dragon Sky go, it would really be the root of Heaven Luo City's destruction. Anyway, he had already offended an enemy like Ling Xian Tian Pavilion, so he was not afraid of another Heaven Burial Association. There was a point in saying that when there were too many debts, there was no need to worry, and when there were too many lice, there was no itch. As Nye Tian spoke, he walked over step by step, and with every step he took, the killing intent in his eyes became stronger. "Nye Tian, do you dare?" Dragon Sky's entire body was shrouded in killing intent, and the despair in his eyes suddenly expanded. Even his voice was trembling because of it. "You'll know whether I dare or not when you're dead." Nie Tianling smiled, and the sword absolute heaven beheader was raised high. When the sword light fell, it would be the moment when Dragon Sky's head fell to the ground. "I'll kill you!" All of a sudden, Long Haotian's dying body shuddered. Immediately afterwards, the blade dragon wings on his back folded and morphed into a sharp blade that shot towards Nie Tian. This was the most brutal attack, and it contained the determination of a life-and-death struggle. Unfortunately, Nie Tian was already prepared. His body lit up with a layer of green light, and in a flash, he blocked Dragon Sky's last attack. The blade dragon wings on Dragon Sky's back disappeared, and he immediately lost his balance and fell to the ground. "Die!" Nie Tian flapped his wings, and his body swooped down and stabbed at Dragon Sky. "Wei Yangzi, save me!" Dragon Sky shouted in midair. Boom! Then, a figure rose from the ground, and like a bolt of lightning, he charged at Dragon Sky. "Zhao Kuo, stop him!" Nie Tian had already expected this, and he shouted. Zhao Kuo was still on the ground, and when he heard Nie Tian's shout, he immediately reacted, but he was one step too late. Swoosh! Nie Tian disregarded everything, and a sword light gushed out from the sword absolute heaven beheader, whistling through the air. Unfortunately, the figure in the sky was even faster than his sword light. Wei Yangzi's body was surging with a faint light, and he actually opened up a space. His figure swept into midair, and he saved Dragon Sky before Nie Tian's sword light could reach him. The next moment, Wei Yangzi suddenly turned around, and his gloomy eyes locked onto Nie Tian. Suddenly, a formless pressure enveloped him, and the space around Nie Tian froze. Nie Tian's extremely fast figure seemed to be frozen, and he suddenly became very slow. Divine Wheel Space. Nie Tian immediately realized that it was Wei Yangzi's Divine Wheel Space that had directly sealed the space he was in. "Little brat, die." Wei Yangzi's indifferent voice was heard, and there was no joy or sorrow in his voice, as if he was talking about something normal. Chapter 380. Wei Yangzi looked at Nie Tian cold. His face was filled with murderous intent. From the battle between Nie Tian and Long Sky, Wei Yangzi had already seen his astonishing talent and strength. If such a person was allowed to continue growing, he would sooner or later become heaven-defying. At this moment, Wei Yangzi had made up his mind to kill Nie Tian no matter what. Nie Tian was locked by Wei Yangzi's God Wheel Space. His body was confined and he could not move. Only warriors at the God Wheel stage and above could possess the God Wheel Space. It could directly confine a space. A ray of white light attacked Nie Tian at an extremely fast speed. The friction in the air created a dazzling white light. Oh no! Nie Tian's face was filled with horror. He knew that things were not going well, but he had no other way. Even if the raw star stone in his body released the power of the stars, the space around him still did not move. If he was hit by Wei Yangzi's attack, Nie Tian would definitely die. His opponent was a warrior at the God Wheel stage. Nie Tian could not contend with him at this moment. At this critical moment, something strange happened. Bang! Just as the fatal ray of white light was about to hit Nie Tian, a powerful palm force whizzed out and blocked the fatal attack. Bang! In the next moment, a formless and massive force came crashing over. The space around Nie Tian's divine wheel was directly broken. He could move his body immediately. Elderly! Seeing the face that suddenly appeared beside him, Nie Tian heaved a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, Elderly had been paying attention to every movement on the battlefield. His figure appeared almost at the same time as Wei Yangzi. This was how he managed to block the fatal attack for Nie Tian. "You dog, how dare you cause trouble at the Dragon Blood Martial Gathering? You are courting death." At this moment, Zhao Kuo's figure appeared. He soared into the sky and struck out with his palm. Thunder rumbled. The powerful palm force spread out for thousands of meters and bombarded Wei Yangzi. Nie Tian could feel the space below being compressed and deformed. His heart shuddered. The attack of a spirit wheel stage expert is indeed overbearing. Although the battle between him and Long Haotian just now was very thrilling, either one of them would definitely not be able to withstand an all-out attack from a spirit wheel realm warrior. Humph! Wei Yangzi lowered his head and looked at Zhao Kuo. His face was expressionless as he slapped down with his palm. Suddenly, the two giant handprints that blotted out the sky collided with each other. Boom! Unfortunately, the palm print pressing down from above was obviously more terrifying. It swallowed Zhao Kuo's giant palm print and pressed down with the force of a thunderbolt. Purring! With a muffled sound, Zhao Kuo smashed into the ground like an arrow. Rumble! A loud sound came from the ground, and a dozen or so meters of dust flew into the air. A huge pit that was tens of meters deep appeared. Zhao Kuo's body lay in the center of the huge pit, dripping with blood. It was hard to tell whether he was dead or alive. Seeing this scene, Nie Tian could not help but gasp. He did not expect Wei Yangzi to be so powerful. With just one palm, Wei Yangzi had beaten Zhao Kuo to a pulp. For a spirit wheel practitioner, the gap between each stage was like a chasm that could not be crossed. Duanmu Bai, Elderly, Zhao Kuo, Lu Liangkai and the rest were all spirit wheel practitioners. However, Duanmu Bai's aura was obviously much more powerful than the other three. Elderly and Zhao Kuo should be on par, while Lu Liangkai was slightly weaker. He should only be at the first stage of the spirit wheel. When Elderly saw that Wei Yangzi had sent Zhao Kuo flying with just one palm, his face turned gloomy. At this moment another figure appeared. It was Duanmu Bai. Duanmu Bai and Elderly looked at each other. Both of them had a solemn look on their faces. Wei Yangzi was too powerful. Even Duanmu Bai would not be able to send Zhao Kuo flying with just one palm. Get lost! Wei Yangzi sent Zhao Kuo flying with one palm. There was no expression on his face. He then turned to Duanmu Bai and Elderly and spat out a word coldly. Duanmu Bai and Elderly looked at each other again. They did not expect him to be so arrogant. Both of them tensed up. Not only did they not retreat, but they also stood in front of Nie Tian and said at the same time, Nie Tian City Lord, you leave first. Yeah. Nie Tian nodded, but he had a bad premonition in his heart. Wei Yangzi was too powerful. He sent Zhao Kuo flying with one palm. It would be worse for Nie Tian to stay. He would only be a burden to Duanmu Bai and Elderly. The strength of a spirit wheel practitioner was too strong. He was not someone that he could fight against at this moment. Leave? Wei Yangzi smiled coldly. There was finally some expression on his face, but it was one of extreme contempt. His body shook, and a powerful and domineering aura pressed down like a mountain. Nie Tian suddenly felt his chest sink. A powerful and irresistible force wrapped around his entire body. Nie Tian. Elderly saw this and immediately opened up his spirit wheel space. He actually chose to fight against Wei Yangzi head-on. At the same time, Duanmu Bai also made a move. A powerful palm pushed the dark clouds in all directions and pressed towards Wei Yangzi. At this moment, Wei Yangzi was still holding the dragon sky in his hand. However, he was calm and even had a look of contempt on his face. Bang! In midair, the spirit wheel spaces of Elderly and Wei Yangzi collided. Two invisible forces pressed against each other. There was nothing fancy about it, but it could be felt that the space was compressed to the extreme. It was as if it was going to collapse in the next moment. Bang! On the other side, Wei Yangzi struck with his palm. A majestic aura was revealed. It directly pushed Duanmu Bai back by 100 meters. Go! Elder Li's face was tense. He withstood the pressure from Wei Yangzi. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth as he shouted. Nie Tian felt the space around him move a little. Immediately after, the proud sword wings shook and his body retreated by 1,000 meters. Wei Yangzi frowned. There was another expression on his face. It was anger. Immediately after, his cold eyes locked onto Elderly. He said coldly, "Old thing, since you like to save people so much, then leave your life here." "You want to kill me?" "It is not that easy." Elderly raised his eyebrows. In the next moment, the expression on his face became one of extreme shock. "You, trying to trick me with a doppelganger?" "Childish." Wei Yangzi smiled coldly. The aura in his body suddenly tightened. Immediately after, he struck with his palm. A beam of white light shot out. It looked inconspicuous, but it could pass through the spirit wheel space of the two and attack Elderly. In the next moment, the white light flew past. It directly pierced through Elderly's chest and went through his heart. In the air, blood spurted out. Elderly! Nie Tian almost roared at the shocking scene that had just unfolded. He could feel that Elderly's vitality was rapidly fading. This time, it was not a doppelganger. Elderly was really going to die. Elderly had used a doppelganger to trick Ma Ninger from the land of bloody massacre. However, he could not trick Wei Yangzi from the Heaven Burial Association. With such strength, you still want to save people? You are asking for death. Wei Yangzi's cold voice was filled with mockery and contempt. On Elderly's chest, a bloody hole suddenly expanded. Dripping blood gushed out. Elderly's eyes were filled with shock. In the blink of an eye, he lost all his vitality. Chapter 381. In midair, Elderly's body fell straight down and drew a silent arc across the sky. Just as his body was about to hit the ground, a figure suddenly appeared and caught him. Nie Tian looked over and saw that the person who caught Elderly was Rui Qianyu. At this moment, Rui Qianyu was as calm as a block of ice. She didn't make a move, didn't scream, and didn't even have any expression on her face. However, at a certain moment, when she saw the skinny face in front of her clearly, 2 streams of hot tears rolled down her cheeks silently. Originally, Rui Qianyu thought that her heart was as calm as still water. However, at the moment when Elderly really lost his life, she felt an uncontrollable pain in her heart. She had no family left, and Elderly was her last family member. It was a pity that even this last family member had to die in front of her. She couldn't do anything about it. Why was the heavens so unfair to her that they had to take away her last family member? Rui Qianyu's figure floated down and she placed Elderly's body aside. She raised her hand and gently wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes. She then looked at Elderly for the last time with a determined look. "No. I want revenge." At some point, she roared in her heart. However, her cold rationality won over her impulsive emotions. Rui Qianyu only raised her head and looked at Wei Yangzi in the sky. 9 colored pupils, she would remember this face forever. Wei Yangzi was a powerhouse at the spirit wheel stage. When he spread out his divine sense, nothing within a 10,000-meter radius could escape his senses. Naturally, he knew that Rui Qianyu was looking at him, but he didn't care about it at all. At this moment, Rui Qianyu was like an ant to him. He could crush her to death with just a slight movement of his finger. The anger of an ant naturally couldn't enter the eyes of a divine elephant. Wei Yangzi turned to look at Nie Tian. The latter's talent and strength were too strange. If he were to live, he would definitely become a huge threat. It was better to get rid of him. Duanmu's white figure flashed and arrived beside Nie Tian. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, and he could not hide the fear on his face. Even he was injured by a casual strike from Wei Yangzi, and this obviously showed how shocking the latter's strength was. At this moment, everyone was looking at the sky. Their eyes were not filled with shock, but with horror. It was unbelievable that Wei Yangzi dared to send Zhao Kuo flying with a single palm strike. One had to know that the latter was the commander of the Dan Martial Hall. Also, his strength allowed him to instantly kill a warrior at the spirit wheel realm. Even the dignified palace master of the Qiankuan Palace, Duanmu Bai, one of the top figures in the Nanshan region, was beaten to the point of vomiting blood. Such strength was too terrifying. The experts of the major forces hiding in the crowd were all terrified. No one knew where Wei Yangzi came from. In any case, he was just this powerful and unreasonable. Wei Yangzi's eyes flickered. He glanced at Duanmu and said coldly, "Do you want to die?" Duanmu Bai's face was pale at this moment, and he no longer had the demeanor of a palace master. Nie Tian put one hand on Duanmu Bai's shoulder, and his eyes were filled with determination. He said indifferently, "Palace Master Duanmu, you may step down." This. Duanmu Bai was slightly stunned, and he was at a loss. It was not that he didn't want to save people, but he was really no match for Wei Yangzi. Who knew where this guy came from, and how could his strength be so terrifying? Duanmu Bai was at the 5th tier of the spirit wheel. He speculated that Wei Yangzi's strength was definitely above the 6th tier, or even the 7th tier. With such strength, he could definitely stand at the top of the 4 regions. Even the inner sect elders of the 4 major clans might not have such strength. Nie Tian took a step forward. There was no fear in his eyes, but determination and decisiveness. Huh! Wei Yangzi noticed the confidence in Nie Tian's eyes, and he couldn't help but frown. He did not expect that even someone as powerful as him would not be able to make the young man in front of him feel fear. To be able to remain so calm in the face of an enemy far stronger than oneself, it was impossible to do so without great willpower. The youth in front of him made Wei Yangzi think of 2 words: hidden dragon. Since that's the case, all the more I can't let you live. Wei Yangzi suppressed the shock in his heart and spoke calmly. This kind of calm attitude before killing was terrifying. Boom! Right at this moment, the earth suddenly shook inexplicably, emitting a violent roar. Nie Tian seemed to notice something and frowned slightly. Wei Yangzi was also stunned for a moment. He looked at the ground with a strange expression. A trace of panic actually appeared on his face that was as calm as an ancient well. Everyone on the ground was even more shocked. They looked at each other, wondering if it was just an illusion. Boom! Following that, the earth shook violently again. Following that, at the center of the dojo, a mound of earth with a circumference of over 10 meters suddenly appeared, as if there was a terrifying force trying to dig its way out from the ground. Nie Tian spread his divine sense, and discovered that the dragon chi in the air wasn't coming from Little 3. Instead, it was converging on the ground and pouring into the ground, as if there was a vortex under the ground that was absorbing the dragon chi. Ancient dragon soul! In the next moment, Nie Tian immediately thought of something, and his face turned pale. Squeak! At the same time, the 9 extremities chaos in the chaotic original coffin suddenly woke up and let out an excited cry. Master, you're saying that the ancient dragon soul in the underground dragon blood stone mine is about to be born. The corpse demon lord's tiny body shook a little, and said with a sharp voice. Yes. Nie Tian nodded heavily. He was very sure that the dragon soul in the dragon blood stone mine was about to be born. The venue of the dragon martial meet was not far from the dragon blood stone mine. It was only a few thousand meters away. After an ancient divine dragon died, its body would decay, but its dragon chi and dragon soul would not disappear. The dragon chi and blood essence would fuse into the underground rocks and form the dragon bloodstone, and the dragon soul would fall into a deep slumber near the dragon bloodstone. Nie Tian guessed that the dragon chi released from the heaven-defying dragon soul in the sky must have stimulated the ancient dragon soul, causing it to wake up from its slumber. The ancient dragon soul was a true dragon soul. It was not something that the dragon soul produced by the blade dragon arm with only 2 azure dragon seals unlocked could compare to. Even after sleeping for tens of thousands of years, the ancient dragon soul still possessed immeasurable strength. Boom! Boom! Following that, the ground shook violently, and small mounds of earth were lifted up one after another. Immediately, huge cracks appeared on the ground, as if the entire ground was about to collapse. The martial artists on the ground sensed the danger, and began to flee in panic. Wei Yangzi looked at Duanmu Bai and Ye Tian with a cold gaze. He frowned and pondered if he should still attack Ye Tian. If he attacked now, with Duanmu Bai's strength, he should be able to delay him for a while. Wei Yangzi didn't know how terrifying the thing under the ground was, and he couldn't help but have doubts. Just when Wei Yangzi was hesitating, the ground shook even more violently. Rumble! The cracks on the ground became bigger and bigger. Rocks fell from the ground, and the surrounding terrain was forcefully torn apart. Trees hundreds of meters away were uprooted. Chapter 382. This is... Looking at the giant golden claw on the ground, Nye Tian couldn't help but gulp. 2 words flashed through his mind: Golden Dragon. Golden Dragon, the legendary king of the ancient dragon clan. Previously, Nye Tian knew that the dragon bloodstone mine was thousands of meters long, so he casually guessed that it was formed after the death of a golden dragon. To his surprise, he guessed right. Bang! At this moment, a loud noise was heard. The trembling ground was finally completely torn apart, and a terrifying figure slowly appeared. The first thing that was revealed was a thick shield-like thing covered in golden scales. It looked to be 50 to 60 meters wide. Although it wasn't tangible, it still gave people a threatening feeling. This should be the dragon armor on the back of a golden dragon. Judging from this, a golden dragon's body length is definitely more than thousands of meters. Nye Tian thought to himself, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He suddenly thought of something and looked towards the high platform in the center of the dojo. Judging from this, a golden dragon's body length is definitely more than thousands of meters. Nye Yuro and the others must have been taken away by Lu Liangkai and the others. Rumble! Rumble! An even louder rumble erupted from the ground, and the entire ground was torn apart. Pieces of the giant body that were shining with golden light were gradually revealed. On the ground, it was a mess, and there were ghostly cries and wolf howls everywhere. The crowd fled in all directions, and the cries of their parents were drowned out by the rumbling of the ground. Wei Yangzi stared at Nye Tian and Duanmu for a long time, and finally chose to give up. Although he really wanted to kill Nye Tian, his own life was more important. The thing underground was too terrifying. Even Wei Yangzi didn't dare to fight against it. Bang! 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 Just as Wei Yangzi turned around and was about to leave, countless giant rocks suddenly burst out from the ground, and all of them shot towards him. Wei Yangzi frowned slightly. He struck out with his palm, and the powerful palm force shattered the giant rocks that were flying towards him. Humanoid. In the next moment, a huge dragon head broke through the ground, and the sound of a landslide rang out. It was actually speaking. Nye Tian's heart suddenly trembled. Even though he was once the #1 war god in the heaven realm, he had never seen the legendary ancient divine dragon. At this moment, he was just as shocked as everyone else. Although the golden dragon head wasn't physical, the surging draconic aura, the dazzling golden scales, and the huge dragon eyes that were as dazzling as the sun were all vivid and lifelike. As it roared, its overwhelming might seemed to be able to destroy everything. And in the next moment, Nye Tian was completely stunned, because what he thought was the dragon's back was actually the dragon's head. The entire dragon head was several hundred meters long. My God, just a single dragon head was several hundred meters long. How terrifying would it be when its entire body was stretched out? Nye Tian immediately deduced that the body of this ancient dragon soul was definitely more than 3,000 meters long. Boom! The ancient dragon soul's huge body started burrowing out of the ground. In an instant, the mountains collapsed, and huge rocks flew everywhere. It was as if doomsday had arrived. As the ancient dragon soul's huge body shot up into the sky, an endless might spread out, covering the space within a few thousand meters. Nye Tian and Duanmu Bai felt the irresistible pressure and quickly retreated several thousand meters, distancing themselves from the golden dragon. Of course, Wei Yangzi also felt the danger and wanted to escape. However, the golden dragon seemed to have taken a look at him. Its huge body rolled, sweeping up the remnant clouds, and directly flew towards him. Wei Yangzi felt strange. Why was the golden dragon so fixated on him? The moment the dragon appeared, it had already attacked him. Now it was chasing after him. This was too strange. Despicable human! The golden dragon let out a mighty voice in the sky. Why do you have something that belongs to our dragon tribe? Hand it over! As the galloping sound faded, the golden dragon's body suddenly released countless bolts of golden lightning. Like steel chains, they enveloped Wei Yangzi. Every golden thunderbolt was 1,000 meters long and dozens of meters wide. Covered the sky and covered the earth. It was extremely terrifying. Nie Tian and Duanmu Bai were dumbfounded. This was the first time the golden dragon had revealed its strength, and it was too terrifying. The golden thunderbolts were extremely powerful. Even a spirit wheel realm warrior would be turned into ashes if he came into contact with them. Countless golden thunderbolts formed an encirclement and gradually formed a golden lightning pillar that connected the sky and the earth. It wrapped around Wei Yangzi, who was running away in panic. Wei Yangzi was surrounded by the golden lightning pillar. His expressionless face immediately revealed extreme fear, and his face turned as white as a sheet. In the face of a real death threat, he was far from being as calm as Nie Tian. Despicable human, hand over the thing in your hand. A huge dragon head emerged from the top of the golden lightning pillar. The roar was like thunder exploding beside their ears. Wei Yangzi suppressed the fear in his heart and said with a slightly trembling voice, "Respected Lord Dragon God, I don't have anything on me that belongs to your dragon tribe." Wei Yangzi was about to cry for his parent. He didn't understand what was going on, and he didn't even know what this huge creature that suddenly appeared from the ground was. He only called out to Lord Dragon God based on a guess in his heart. If he really had something on him that belonged to the dragon tribe, he would have called out long ago. He wouldn't have dared to hide it. Cunning human, do you think I'm blind? The thing in your hand clearly belongs to the dragon tribe. The golden dragon's rumbling voice sounded out, and this time, it was accompanied by enormous fury. With a "pa" sound, a weak golden lightning struck Wei Yangzi's face. The latter didn't even have the time to react before a scarlet-red bloody mark appeared on his face. Wei Yangzi felt a burning pain on his face. He looked at Dragon Sky in his hand and suddenly understood. The thing that the golden dragon wanted was the dragon saber arm. However, Wei Yangzi couldn't understand. The dragon saber arm was born with Dragon Sky. How could it belong to the dragon tribe? However, this was obviously not the time to reason with the golden dragon. Wei Yangzi didn't hesitate and immediately handed the unconscious Dragon Sky to the golden dragon. Swoosh! The golden dragon's huge whisker lashed out like a steel whip, and directly tore Dragon Sky's left arm off. Ah! Dragon Sky woke up from the pain and let out a tragic cry. The huge whisker wrapped around the dragon saber arm. The golden dragon stared at it for a long time and said, "This is obviously the arm of a young dragon that isn't even 3 months old. Why is it on a human's arm?" Chapter 383. The golden dragon's majestic voice shook Wei Yangzi's body. He was drenched in cold sweat and his forehead was covered in sweat. Bam! Wei Yangzi made up his mind and slammed his palm on Dragon Sky's chest, shattering the latter's internal organs. Poor Long Haotian. He didn't even know what was going on before he died. Honorable Lord Dragon God, this was all done by this fellow. It has nothing to do with me. I'll help Lord Dragon God kill him now to avenge the death of the young dragon. Please don't punish me, Lord Dragon God. Yangzi's face was solemn, as if he was putting family before righteousness. The colossal golden dragon's whiskers fluttered as it stuffed the blade-like arm into its mouth. Its huge head swayed for a moment, and then it said with a very satisfied expression, "Human, I am very satisfied with your performance. You may leave now." After that, the golden lightning pillar disappeared. Thank you, Lord Dragon God. Wei Yangzi's face lit up. He thought to himself, this stupid dragon is too stupid. How could he believe such words? Wei Yangzi looked at Nie Tian and Duanmu Bai regretfully. He didn't dare to stay any longer and disappeared in a flash. Off to the side, Nie Tian and Duanmu Bai were dumbfounded. After the golden colossal dragon confirmed that Wei Yangzi had left, its enormous dragon whiskers actually twirled complacently in the air, and it seemed as if it had drawn out a golden flower. It took out the blade dragon arm and placed it before its enormous eyes to carefully size it up, and it actually couldn't help but chuckle. Ha 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 ha. I Dishi am really the smartest dragon in the golden colossal dragon clan. That stupid human was really too stupid. Did he really think I didn't know? This is not the arm of a young dragon. It's one of the 4 mysterious arms, the blade dragon arm. Ah. Looks like the heavens have been kind to me, allowing me to get the legendary blade dragon arm as soon as I was born. Duanmu Bai and Nie Tian looked at each other speechlessly. The giant golden dragon had actually tricked Wei Yangzi. Duanmu Bai was stunned on the spot, unable to speak for a long time. Nie Tian's lips curled into a smile as he thought to himself, this guy tricked the blade dragon arm blade from Wei Yangzi. Maybe I can trick it back. Although this golden WYRM considered itself to be extremely intelligent, its intelligence was really not to be complimented based on its current performance. Wei Yangzi was afraid of its strength. Otherwise, even if it was really smart, it wouldn't have been able to trick the blade dragon arm, ha ha ha. It was rumored that the saber dragon arm could absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and produce the purest dragon chi. With the saber dragon arm, I will be able to form a new body in 1,000 years at most. By then, I will be able to carry out the task assigned to me by His Majesty Dragon Emperor. The golden colossal dragon Dishi laughed heartily. His enormous draconic body emanated a majestic draconic aura, causing even the heavens and the earth to tremble. 1,000 years? Hearing Dishi's words, Nie Tian's expression stiffened. But when he thought about it, he understood. It was rumored that the primordial dragon clan had extremely long lifespans. Ordinary dragons could live for more than 10,000 years. As the king of the dragon clan, the golden WYRM clan could live for more than 50,000 years. Compared to a 50,000-year lifespan, 1,000 years was indeed not a very long time. Nie Tian could basically tell that this golden WYRM had just woken up and was still in a daze. He definitely didn't know that the dragon clan had been completely extinct. Lord Dishi. Nie Tian thought for a moment and walked forward. The golden WRM, Dishi's pupils, which were like golden fireballs, suddenly enlarged. He actually didn't notice the presence of Nie Tian and Duanmu Bai. When Duanmu Bai saw Nie Tian walk over, he was scared silly. He shouted in his heart, "Are you crazy?" The golden WRM's dragon whiskers froze in the air for a moment. The huge dragon head showed a strange expression and said, "Human, how do you know my name?" Nie Tian's face darkened. He said, "Lord Dishi was talking to himself just now. My ears weren't listening, so I heard your name." Dishi's huge dragon head nodded and his voice shook. "Human, your ears aren't listening, but they're too sensitive. This is not good for you. Because there are some things that can't be heard and can't be known." Nie Tian was completely speechless. This guy actually knew how to teach people. Lord Dishi is right. With a faint smile, Nie Tian asked, "Lord Dishi, where are you going with the blade dragon arm?" "This is my business. Why should I tell you?" Dishi's voice was filled with caution. Nie Tian frowned slightly. After a pause, he said directly, "Lord Dishi, do you know how many years have passed since you fell?" "I have fallen." Dishi's huge eyes suddenly flashed with a strange light. Immediately, his dragon head turned and began to observe the surrounding environment. In his eyes, the passage of hundreds of thousands of years was gradually reflected. Gradually, the golden WRMD she fell into great pain. Nie Tian nodded and murmured, "It seems that he remembered everything." "No. Impossible." After a long time, the golden WRM suddenly roared. Its huge body rolled up and rushed into the sky like a golden lightning. "I, Dishi, don't believe it. I don't believe that the great dragon race will perish." Dishi's mighty voice resounded between heaven and earth. The dragon's roar was sorrowful and lofty. "Nie Tian City Lord, this dragon." Duanmu Bai walked to Nie Tian's side and looked at the golden WRM that was rolling in the sky. His face was filled with shock. Everything that happened today was far beyond Duanmu Bai's understanding. Before this, he didn't even believe that the ancient dragon race really existed. After all, it was a legend from hundreds of thousands of years ago. Nie Tian frowned. This was the first time he saw a real dragon, and he didn't expect it to be such a strange dragon. It could only be said that Shi was a golden WRM with complicated emotions. "Nie Tian City Lord, this dragon won't kill itself if it continues to cause trouble, right?" Duanmu Bai couldn't help but frown when he saw the golden WRM was extremely angry. The dragon's body kept rolling and the dragon's aura spread in all directions. "Let it calm down first," Nie Tian said with a frown. Shi was too powerful. Even if Nie Tian wanted to stop it, it was impossible. After an unknown period of time, the roar in the sky gradually weakened. After a while, Shi's figure appeared again. The huge dragon's head carried a sorrowful emotion. "Lord Shi," Nie Tian said calmly. Just as he was about to say something, he saw that Shi was sizing him up, so he stopped. Shi stared at Nie Tian with his huge eyes, as if he was making a big decision. "Human, I want to make a deal with you." Finally, Shi seemed to have made a decision and spoke in a deep voice.